Tradin Faves aims to be a family-friendly podcast. Even though the topic of today's episode is a mature-rated game, we still intend to keep the family focus and discuss the heavier themes of the game with tact and respect. That said, we strongly discourage anyone under adult age from playing this game at all, and would also like to warn anyone sensitive to mature content. This game contains themes of violence, as well as child kidnapping and endangerment. If such topics are uncomfortable, then your discretion and best judgment are advised.
Violence breeds violence.
Yeah.
Begin playback. 3 months I've been working towards this, and on the first day of the playthrough, my brother has me doubting the whole thing. We'll leave it up to him then, shall we, viewers? A chance to play something more family-friendly. May the best game win. He thinks the game is too violent, and that's that. Back to our regularly scheduled Kirby's Dream Land 2 playthrough. But if we finish this game, if we record this podcast, the video will be uploaded after a couple of hours. What happens to the like and subscribe buttons after that is up to you, viewers.
Huh. Even dead, that guy's a pain in my... Welcome back to Tradin Faves, everybody. I'm not going to carry on the scene anymore.
that was beautiful. And
Yeah.
then, sorry. So, I was going to say this a little more gracefully, but this is also our first episode with a guest. My son is sitting in my lap and trying to eat my headphones.
It's good. We got a baby on board.
Yeah, we got a baby for this family-friendly episode. He also just yeeted his pacifier somewhere, and I'm okay, buddy. You're going back into your little chair. Here you go, baby.
We picked the one game.
Here, you can have this.
This
Friend,
is also probably going to be like the least family-friendly game we ever do on the podcast, and we got him here for this one.
I know it just worked out that way. That's the thing. Gosh dang it! There it is.
Don't worry, kiddo. Your Uncle Joseph's
he-
gonna help you.
He launched that thing. Anyway, so the point I was going to say is that yeah, he's here. He's being good right now. We'll see if he behaves himself. You might have to do a lot of editing this episode.
Yeah, we'll see. If he makes any gross screamy noises, then yeah, I'll just edit them out. And if he makes any cute noises, I don't know. People like babies. Maybe it'll it won't really go well with the subject matter, but you know.
Which is really funny. I was trying so hard not to laugh during that whole thing you were doing, and then right as you were done, that's when he decided my time is now and threw his pacifier.
You throw him the pacifier and he catches it and he's like, Armstrong!
Armstrong! But it's more like, ugh! Or whatever weird noises he feels like making.
Yeah,
He's
baby
just
noises.
watching me now.
That's alright, it's fun. So he's technically our first celebrity guest.
Yeah. I mean, technically, you can also include, like, any of the times that a cat has, like, walked across our keyboard or something while we were recording.
They didn't meow. It doesn't count.
Doesn't count. Didn't say anything.
You have to make a sound. It's a podcast. This is the banter that people come here for.
I know.
The kind of quality hijinks you can only get on PurpleCheeseMan's YouTube channel.
This is, like, I sit there and I'm like, man, we go on way too many tangents, and I just go, whatever, man. This is our show. We can do what we want. Do you want to try a third read on that?
Even when the baby's not in the room, he's a pain in my... Now we'll just keep it, because I got a clean first take, so if we're gonna skip it, if not, then I'm including it.
Please include all of that into the bloopers. Okay, welcome back.
Yeah, we're here with Tradin Faves. We're having a good time, definitely not having to re-record things.
Multiple times.
Everything you guys see from this side is going to be as smooth as we normally put out, which is not that smooth. But, like, trust us, behind the scenes, it's a whole lot less smooth.
It's been a bit of a disaster of a day trying to make this happen.
Yeah, that's all right, though, because we're going to make it happen now.
Yeah, it's happening.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, this is happening.
That's Sonic. We're not talking about him today.
Oh, wait, we're not talking about Sonic?
Well, we probably will, let's be honest.
I have in my notes something about Sonic.
Good.
It'll show up.
Good. Me too.
Sonic and Mother Brain are the two constants in our podcast.
Yeah, we gotta find a way to work Mother Brain into this.
Oh, I'll find a way. Don't you worry.
Okay, I believe you. All right, so as you have seen from this, because it's a YouTube video, the game of today's topic is Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance.
Yeah.
Hooray!
Man, this was a game.
This is a wild ride of a game.
I was excited. I had no idea what to expect, but this game was not what I expected.
Yep. I think you see what I mean now. Like, if you're just joining us from the previous podcast right into this one, you'll have a bit more of a clear concept of how things have changed. But I was just like, I'm not sure if you like this one, and you were like, oh, it'll be fine.
And it's weird because we'll talk about it in this, but like there are things that I genuinely liked about this game, but there were just specific lines that it crossed. I didn't even realize were lines that, like, once it crossed them, I was like, ooh, I don't like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. This is gonna be an interesting episode. I'm interested in seeing where it goes.
Definitely.
Talk.
Yeah, and so the interesting thing about this technically is the game that I'm recommending to David. We're back on that part of the cycle of doing things. But that said, this is kind of like a new game for both of us, because I only played this game, like, maybe a month before we did our playthrough. Mm-hmm. So this is still a pretty new experience for me as well. And with that, we're going to get into our first segment of the podcast where we talk about our history and experience with the game. Now, you said you do actually have some history things to talk about. That's Metal Gear in general, right?
Yeah, more just Metal Gear in general, and it's barely anything.
Okay.
Because honestly, it's not much. Like, I went over to a friend's house once, and his cousin was over, and he was playing Metal Gear Solid 3, and he was, like, at the final boss. Mm-hmm. Like, I literally watched the ending of that game with no context, and I was so lost. I just remember he ate a pill and died, and the boss is like, he's dead. I guess that means I win. And then, like, turns his back, and then he eats another pill, gets back up, and shoots him in the back. and then did it a second time, and the boss is like, that won't work on me twice, and runs up and kicks him.
Oh, that's funny.
And then after he beat that, I watched him boot up Metal Gear Solid 4, and there was like this motorcycle chase going on, but there's an item that's like an iPod, so you can change the background music, and he changed it to elevator music. It's like this like smooth jazz as like there's a motorcycle chase and explosions happening. Aside from that, I think the only real bit of like Metal Gear knowledge I had was I read all of the Hi, I'm Daisy comics of like let's destroy Metal Gear or whatever they were called.
Oh, I forgot about those.
Yeah,
those
like
good.
Other than that, it was like Snake and Smash Bros.
Yeah, that's the only one for me that was really anything with Snake and Smash Bros. And I guess also like hearing the Sons of Liberty theme song and being like, yo, this is so good.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, like, neither of us have much Metal Gear Solid experience in general. or even Metal Gear experience in
Yeah.
general.
I will say that is a testament to this game that, like, we went in pretty blind. You gave me a little bit of, like, just background on some things.
Yeah.
Like, very minor. Like, I think you mentioned, like, oh yeah, Raiden's also has another name, Jack the Ripper. So you'll hear people call him that.
Yeah.
And then, like, I think there was, like, the one point where they introduced a character and you're like, okay, this is a character from, like, the previous game.
Yeah.
And this is how, like, Raiden knows her. And I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Mostly just
like,
only, like, history bits of the series as they concern Raiden. And most of them were probably not even accurate because I don't know enough about the series.
Yeah, well, and it was interesting, too, because, like, I feel like even if I did know Metal Gear Solid, like, I had a hard time following this plot.
Yeah.
Because of some of the loopiness that had happened with
it's like
it.
it's loopy for one thing, but then it's also like they use like a ton of acronyms and like code words, and
Yeah,
it's just like, what are you guys talking about?
We hit a point where, like, we weren't even calling people by their actual names, or at least I wasn't.
No.
Like, everything had a nickname. Like,
Yeah.
I had to write down all of the names on my notes so that I knew who we were talking about. Because, like, what was it, Sundowner? He's Alex Jones.
Alex.
And, like,
Yeah.
and then what was it? Like, because I think the bad guys were Desperado.
Yeah.
But, like, we just literally were calling them the bad guys.
The bad
Like,
guys.
for the whole playthrough. Just because, like...
It's just, I don't know, in terms of, like, the actual world building and the concepts and the mythos of the game, it's, like, really abstract and there's a ton of weird plot threads. But in terms of, like, the pacing and what actually happens, it's mostly, like, good guy use sword, chop up a bad guy. Like...
Basically.
It's really straightforward to see, like, oh, main character is angry at this other character. Now they sword fight.
Yeah.
We're getting kind of ahead of ourselves here. I
Yeah,
gotta get
a
into
little
my
bit, a little
history still.
Yeah. I do you have any history?
Not much either, because like I said, I played this last month, but I do have some relevant things to bring up, like how I found the game and why we're even talking about it. So this game released in 2013 on consoles and in 2014 later on PC. I didn't really know much about it other than its name, Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, and I thought Revengeance was the stupidest word I'd ever heard.
It's kind of fitting for this game, though.
It is. But more or less, the first place that I really saw anything about this game or learned anything about this game was through, believe it or not, PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale.
What?
Because Raiden is a playable character in that, because they couldn't use Solid Snake, because he's in Smash Bros.
I didn't know this. Oh my goodness.
So that's kind of interesting, and the funniest part about this is, so his stage is, they have, like, a shared one, because, like, certain franchises, like, share their stages. So guess what Raiden's stage is shared with?
I have no idea.
Loco Roco. Have you heard of Loco Roco at all?
I have. It's that orange blob.
Yeah, it's the little, like, blobby guys that sing in a made-up language.
Oh.
So it's the craziest thing. Basically, like, it's a Loco Roco stage with all the cute visuals and the happy music and everything singing. And then, like, after a certain point, like, Metal Gear Ray busts through the background and you see, like, the burning city behind and everything. And it's the strangest thing, but it is, like, 100% like this game.
Oh, that's like you're saying that, and I'm like, this is so on brand.
It's for real. So that was the first time I learned anything about this, because, like, at first I saw Raiden, I was like, who the heck is this? And it was like Steven or someone. He was like, it's from, like, a Metal Gear game, and I was like, this guy? Why didn't they just put Snake in?
Because he was too busy being in Smash Bros.
He's too busy hanging out with Nintendo. um, but then it was like I saw that whole thing with the Locoroco stage. I was like, this is awesome. Anyway, so I guess the other thing about it, after that point, learning some things about it, I was just kind of, one day I was like, okay, I'll look into this game. What I first saw of it was that it was violent.
Yep.
And specifically, like, one of the very first things that I saw about it was one of the, let's just say, more disturbing plot points that we'll get into.
Oh,
and
boy.
So I found it to be pretty darn off-putting, and I was like, ugh, don't want this. Nothing, nowhere near this game. Not touching this. Like, completely disinterested. And so that was kind of the case for a couple of years. So there is one, there's a point in my life, it's like a couple of years ago, I found the YouTube channel Oni Plays. And for a bit of my life, I was kind of on a kick. I'm not, like, plugging these guys or recommending you should watch them. They're, like, vastly more famous than me anyways. So it doesn't really matter. But, so for a while, I was on a kick of, like, watching stuff on their channel. And, they were doing a playthrough of this game. And so, and most of their thing is, like, they usually just kind of, like, make fun of games and, like, dork around and don't take anything seriously. So I was like, okay, I'll watch them take the piss out of this game then, like, you know, just make a complete joke of this or whatever. And they were invested, like, from start to finish. And they did it, like, props to them for this playthrough, because, like, they did a good job, like, showing off the impressive aspects of the game and everything. And, like, I was just watching, I was like, oh, this game's kind of cool. And then I remembered some of the more disturbing elements to it, and I was like, it's kind of cool. But at the very least, the gameplay had me super intrigued. Fast forward to this year, but, like, I watched the whole playthrough, because, like, you know, I assumed I was never going to play it, and then I walked away having at least an appreciation for it. Fast forward to this year, I found it on sale on Steam, counting tax, for $8.
That is a good deal.
And I was like, holy smokes! This is like a... this is a freaking, like, high-budget, like, amazing, like, fan-favorite everything game. And it's $8. So I was like, if I'm ever gonna get it, now's gotta be the time, right?
I thought my deal on Chrono Trigger was good. Like,
for real. I mean, it's, like, currently on Steam, like, it goes for, like, $40.
Yeah.
And they had it here for $8. It's like, this is nuts. So I went ahead and got it because I could, you know, get it for pocket change. I started playing it, and as I suspected, like, the gameplay's pretty darn good. Like, it's made by Platinum Games. Most of the stuff they make is, like, solid gold, and then the stuff they make that's not is, like, it's still pretty darn good. And yeah, this one ranks up there with, like, other Platinum games. In fact, specifically, I had tried a couple of Platinum games, and they didn't completely gel with me. Like, I tried Wonderful 101, and I like the world and the characters and, like, the concept, but, like, gameplay was just a bit too difficult for me. I tried Bayonetta, and that one was kind of, like, more off-putting than this one. Because they're like, this one throws sex into the mix, and I was like, no, inappropriate, don't want. But yeah, this one is like, I don't know, here's the thing about me. I like samurais. Like, a lot.
Samurais and ninjas.
And so, even though I don't usually like violence in video games, like, you can just about get me to, you know, look the other way for anything that's got cool samurais in it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I watched the show Afro Samurai, for Pete's sake, and that one is
Yeah.
more adult than this. Um, but yeah, so I played through this game, and like we said, it's a wild ride. This game is completely bonkers, and I was just like, I had to talk to somebody about this game, because I was like, I didn't dream this. This is a real thing, right? Like,
That's exactly what I thought. This is my version of this is our version of that. Now that we get to talk to each other about it, because this game felt like a fever dream.
It really does. And that was the main thing. Even though I didn't enjoy everything about the game, I was just like, and I also assumed that you probably wouldn't enjoy everything about the game either. I was just like, I gotta talk to somebody about this game.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the most unusual thing I've ever found.
Definitely. It's so weird because, like, you know, I'm thinking about like Super Metroid and like the kind of things that like we've said that you're like, oh yeah, I want to recommend these to you. And this is the most like out of left field thing that I did not expect from you.
Yeah, definitely. And here's the thing about this. The main reason that this one's even happening on the podcast was just the timing of when I played it. I was like, we need to talk about this soon. Like, definitely normally would not recommend this kind of thing, and definitely, like, this is going to be the most mature game on the podcast, because, like, I doubt there's any game that you're into that's this mature.
Yeah.
And I don't really have anything else in my library that's like this, so...
Yeah, at most, because I know I've been kicking around the idea of us playing through Danganronpa V3.
Yeah, that one could go there.
that one's definitely got some very dark themes in it, but it's a visual novel. It's on the back burner because I have other stuff I want to recommend to you first.
I mean, I subjected you to this game, so I feel like it's only fair if you want to.
Oh, don't worry. If there's something, if there's a game that I'm going to recommend that you don't like, it's probably going to be The Shining Force.
Well, stay tuned for details on The Shining Force.
Yeah, like I said, we'll get to other stuff on the list, but we're talking about this game.
Yeah. So I guess before we go any further into talking about this, there is something, even though he's more popular than me, there is somebody I do want to shout out, and that is the YouTuber Jimothy Ross.
Oh my god.
So specifically, there's a video he made. It's supposed to be a 2-part thing, and only part 1 is out right now. But he made this video called the Metal Gear Rising Hypercut. And it's basically just like a retelling of the story with like memes and bad jokes and like ridiculous editing all throughout. And it is genuinely like one of the funniest videos I've seen on YouTube. Like his edits, his comedic timing, it's gold.
It's so good. The joke in there that I keep referencing is the Myers-Briggs personality
I kept taking the Myers-Briggs test and getting all the depressed ones. It's so good. His comedy is on point. So you'll have to forgive me, even if you don't know what I'm talking about. I will probably splice in like just some references to that every now and then, like with what we're talking about, because like that video is almost like part of this game to me because it's so funny. And I guess with that said, for anyone that's interested in looking at that, you can leave a note about it to get to it later. But again, it is going through the story of the game. So if you are, you know, not wanting spoilers and wanting to try this, then probably don't watch it until you've played the game.
Yeah, that was as soon as we finished with the game, you're like, all right, we're watching this now.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's
as if the ending to this game wasn't enough of a trip. Then you sent me down that ride.
Oh man, it's good stuff. So apologies if I'm not coming up with my own humor and I'm just referencing that for a lot. But all right, we're officially ready to start talking about the game.
Oh boy.
So tell me, David, what were your first impressions of this game as I showed it to you?
First impressions. So, because we did the training and like learning the controls.
Yeah.
And you're like hacking apart these dudes, and I'm like, oh, this is really cool. Like mechanically, how like you can hack these signs and stuff into like whatever direction you want. I'm like, this is really cool. And then we got to the second part where it's like, all right, here are the guards.
Now here's people.
Here are people. Now hack them to pieces. And I was like, now rip out their spinal cords. And I was just like, so this is gory.
Yup.
Like a lot of gore. And that's so like there are three big issues I had with this game that like final thoughts, I'll repeat this, but like I think this is a very good game. It's very well designed. It just hit on these very specific things that like turned me off from them. And it's weird because like objectively I have to look at this game and be like, this is a well put together game. Like this is a really good game. Its story is a trip. But like because it hit on these things, it's not for me personally.
Yeah.
But that was the biggest first thing was the gore. I don't do so well with gore. Like I can handle blood and violence, but it's when it ramps up into like the really gruesome stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that was with freaking Sundowner, like right in the opening of that game, and just like how he mutilates these guys. And same with Sam. I'm just like, so is this what the whole game is gonna be like? Like I can feel my stomach doing flips.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And I've got like, my little newborn son right there, and I'm just like, it made me feel very uncomfortable like watching this game.
I apologize. I definitely misread the crowd on recommending this game, I feel. Because that was, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've seen you get into other, like, mature stuff in the past. Like, whether or not you even played them. Things like the first Last of Us or, like, Danganronpa or whatever. Like, that was the thing. I knew that you had been into mature games, and so I thought, oh, this one's probably not going to be that bad.
Yeah, it was. That's the thing too. Is like the gore wasn't a deal breaker for me.
Right.
Like there were many instances where I had to look away.
Yeah.
Before I would make a mess of my laptop screen, like by throwing up, because I was like, ooh, that's hard to look at. And I appreciate that at least like when you rip out a guy's spine, it barely looks like a spine.
That's the thing. I'm not even sure those are supposed to be spines. They're just the fuel cells for like all the cyborgs or whatever. But I don't know. At least on the Oni Plays playthrough that I watched, they referred to them as spines. So.
I think because Doctor like mentions that it's like it's spinal fluid or something.
Something like that.
Part of the fuel cell. Point being, it was enough to gross me out, and I was like, okay, I got it. But then like our first boss, the first boss of that, we'll talk about that. But it was a robot, and like there were a couple of those were robots, and so I was like, okay. It was more the fact I was like, wow, these guys are like cybernetically enhanced. There's still a lot of blood inside of them for being so cybernetically enhanced.
Right, because the whole point of it is that they are still humans. It's just with enhancements. Yeah, so that's like I really do want to apologize for that. And this is, like I said, I'm not big on violence either. Maybe it's just because I've seen stuff like God of War and Mortal Kombat, which go further.
Yeah, and I've definitely stayed away from those.
Yeah, that's the one. Mortal Kombat is completely past my line on like what I tolerate on violence. Like I just can't do Mortal Kombat because, and part of the thing about Mortal Kombat is that it's like it's specifically made to look realistic. Which is the most uncomfortable thing about it. For me, with this game, there is gore and there's like a lot of violence. But at the very least, it doesn't completely look realistic.
Yeah,
Which I guess
mean,
is there are some parts that do, and they're kind of gross.
yeah.
I definitely agree there.
I will say though, like, there were things I enjoyed. Like, the game for the year that it came out looks really good.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely aged by today's standards, but you know, for the time, like, it looked good. The voice acting is incredible.
Yes.
The music, the music.
Right.
Here's the thing. All right, I know it's just good old fashioned electric guitar butt rock, and I live for that. Like, that is my Sonic fan, like, coming to the forefront. Like, I love this soundtrack. This soundtrack is killer, and I absolutely love it.
That's good. That's definitely kind of the same thing for me. Like, maybe aside from the violence, like, just the aesthetic of the game and like the type of music they go for, me as a 15-year-old would have been all over this game. Like,
Yeah.
this, like, it was the kind of music I was listening to when I was 15. It was the kind of like mood, like the real gritty, grungy, like samurais and oh man, this game basically took me back to being 15. Like,
Well, especially, like, I love like lyrics in video game music.
mhm.
I think we need more of it.
Yeah, and I
And
guess yeah.
It,
Well, okay,
we'll
go
talk
ahead.
more in depth. I figure we'll talk more in depth on like specific songs,
Hmm.
but like the fact that like there are character themes, I adore that aspect of a game because like I when I like to write and like create characters, a lot of what I do is based on music I listen to. And so just like it perfectly fits into that, and I'm just like, oh, this is so good because it's after we finished the game, I looked up a video talking about this game's music and how like in a book you can express ideas about a character with their thoughts. And so like if they were to ever say that out loud, you'd be like, that's not in character for them. They would never admit that. But just being inside their head, you know, you can get away with that. And so the way they do it in this game is they do it through the lyrics of the music because like the characters can't hear that, but it expresses what's going on inside of them. And I'm like, this is so good. I love it. I live for this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. That is so the thing that's interesting. Most of the discourse surrounding like this game's soundtrack has to just do with the genre or like the tone that it's going for. And it's like it's extremely edgy. It is the most Linkin Park thing that's not Linkin Park. Like it's extremely like edgy, loud, like philosophical yet kind of meaningless lyrics that just like get you amped up and you're like "Ugh!" And it just like makes you want to punch something. Like it's absolutely that kind of stuff, and that's definitely not music for everybody. And I'm kind of like, there are songs in this game that I do like a ton, and then there are songs that are kind of like, that's too edgy for me.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Most of the discourse is about that, like the style of music. For me, the biggest thing about this game and its soundtrack is the amount of effort put into it, because they have so many, it's like they collaborated with so many different artists and singers, and it's like, yes, it's technically everything falls under the umbrella of metal, but they do so many different styles of music and so many different things with like each of the songs. And I think I have not seen a game since Sonic Adventure 2 that has done a soundtrack with like fitting themes to specific characters with such perfection as this game has.
Agreed.
It really is just, oh, it's so good. And like the number one takeaway for me about this game, the very best thing that it does is its sound mixing. Sound mixing is really like one of the most underappreciated aspects of games, because when it's good, you don't even notice that it's good. You are just immersed in the game. And when it's not good, you notice right away, but you don't understand why it's not good. So it's like,
why does this suck?
yeah, exactly. But like the sound effects, the music, the way the music is handled, it's got dynamic music, so like the soundtrack is evolving as you're playing. It's just, oh, it's genius.
Because I do remember when on your Twitter when you posted that meme about like video game final boss music,
Yeah.
and it's how the last one is the like the vocals kick in halfway through the fight, and I'm just like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that is I actually don't think that's the case during the final boss. I'm pretty sure it starts with the vocals.
Does it? I know most of the soundtrack is that way, but it's
right. It's specifically with the final boss. It has to do with whether or not you're, without spoiling anything, because this is whether or not you're holding the sword, and I will say no more than that. Is whether or not there's vocals. So it still is dynamic, but technically I need to update that because like
I gotcha.
Anyways, that's we're getting into spoiler range already. And we haven't even started, but yeah, the sound mixing extremely good in this game. Like this is probably the best sound mixing a game has ever had.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
In terms of like what it does with dynamic music, Fire Emblem also really does some awesome things with dynamic music, especially like the newer, most recent ones. But yeah, nothing holds a candle to this game in terms of how it handles like, you know, songs with vocal themes and stuff. It's just, oh, it's so good.
It's good stuff.
It's real good. All right. So that's kind of the general stuff about the presentation. We can talk about the gameplay.
Yeah.
You weren't the one playing, so I don't know how much you have to say about gameplay.
I
but
have
if you
a
got
little
anything.
bit of it. Just kind of the thing about this game is that it is very much a platinum game.
Yeah.
And this is not at all the fault of this game. It's how I tend to play a lot of their games, because the biggest comparison that I have is Transformers Devastation.
Get ready to hear the name of that game quite a bit.
Yeah, because that's like, you said this was the platinum game that you're like, oh, I played a bunch of theirs. This is the one that hit for you. That was the one for me of like their games where I was like, oh, dude, I adore this game.
And the main thing was I didn't get to play Devastation, so
yeah.
So that's
like,
why.
The thing is like you're given all these different ways to play. You know, like in this game, you know, you have different weapons you can get and different skills you can get with them. And so it gives you all these different play styles, so you can change it up. But then we kind of just stuck with the same weapon the whole playthrough, because I was like, well, this is the cool weapon. Like, let's just stick with this.
I asked you if you wanted to see
I know.
ones.
And that was the thing, though, was that like I wanted to stick with it because I liked it the best. Yeah. But I had the same problem with Transformers Devastation, where like they gave me all these Autobots to play as, and I was like, I just want to play as Bumblebee because I like his playstyle. And so the gameplay starts to get a little redundant because you're not playing the whole, like, the way the devs intended you to play the whole game.
You're not trying out all the things. You're just using your one favorite for the whole thing.
It's like going to a buffet and there's like all these different things. You're like, well, I know I like this one thing, so I'm only gonna eat that. But then it's like, well, okay, then you're missing out on like the full experience.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the way most of us as kids played Pokemon, where we only used one Pokemon for the entire game.
and so it's one of those things that I'm like, I can't fault the game for that reason, because we didn't change it up. We stuck with the basic sword the whole game. But I did notice the game kind of got a little redundant because of that. It kind of just, but I thought it was creative, like the cycle of like, you know, staying alive long enough to like get your health back from one enemy, and then just moving into that, like the next one, and then balancing that with like the stealth kills.
Yeah.
Which I think the stealth kills were like the strongest part of the gameplay, because it was very much like all right, don't get caught. because then we're gonna have a big fight if we do. And so it was like, I liked how the game was set up that way.
Yeah, it was interesting because, like, again, it's supposed to be this big actiony game that is nothing like the other Metal Gears, but they did leave in the option to get stealth kills on enemies. And it's kind of weird. Usually I prefer to just run and fight things. I don't usually enjoy stealth as much in games. But there's just something really satisfying about the way they do it here. And especially, like, with the tougher enemies in the game that you fought and you know they're gonna kick your butt.
Those big gorillas.
You know me, the coconut freak, Donkey Kong.
Yeah, that was, like... It was because you stealth killed a bunch of them, and I was like, okay, like maybe I'll see what these do. And then you botched one, and then he started just knocking you around, and I was like, I see why you're doing this.
Yep. Oh man, there are some brutally tough enemies in this game, which I don't know. Difficult games are not always my cup of tea. When I don't want to play something hard, that's exactly why I go to Kirby. But every now and then, as long as like the controls of the game are good and everything, I'm up for a good challenge. And this game is like just that sweet spot of being like brutally hard in a fun way.
Assuming, you don't make the mistake of going to the hardest difficulty.
I didn't. I'm barely good enough to play it on normal. I am curious to try it on the harder difficulties, but I was so just like, we're not doing that for this playthrough. It'll take too long. Oh man.
Yep.
In general, the thing that I want to say, there's just a lot of good like cinematic flair with this game.
Yeah.
They do all the right stuff with the sweeping camera angles and like the real like the epic close-ups, the slowdown when it's needed.
The slowdown.
And of course like the dynamic music perfectly helps with like making scenes feel like even more epic, because like you're already listening to like wailing guitars and stuff and you're like, oh, this is awesome, and it pumps you up and you start fighting, but then like vocals come in over top of the guitars and you're like, oh. It's just like all the like the dopamine, the hype, like the insanity, the chills, the goosebumps, like everything just smacks you all at once the vocals kick in.
It's very much got that platinum polish.
And that's the thing, like Platinum just has such a good track record anyways, like they just like make good games. For me specifically, like you said, the what do they call it, blade mode, where you can like slash from any angle, was something that was very interesting, and something that like, I guess aside from like Skyward Sword, they just never tried.
There's technically something like kind of like that in Danganronpa 2.
Oh, that's funny.
Which, that was like the closest approximation I could make to that. I was like, oh, it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Right. The other thing that I would say, the other ability that really did a lot for me in terms of how much I enjoyed this game, was the ninja run. For the reason that the fact that like they balance enemies with guns and enemies with swords by having it so as long as you're holding down the run button, you automatically deflect bullets from guns. Which is super cool. You'd think that would make you overpowered, but then it's like you have to judge because you can't run while you're sword fighting, like when you're locked in with like sword to sword combat. So you have this balance of like there's one dude with a sword and 3 dudes around him with guns, and so you have to balance like how you're gonna do it. And then especially during like the first boss or whatever, where there's like a huge spray of bullets coming at you and you're just running through it all. Technically, nothing's really happening in gameplay because nothing can hurt you while you're running. But it just looks so cool and you feel awesome the whole time you're doing it.
I really enjoyed it, because especially like I love when games let you do really cool things very simply. Because it definitely makes you feel powerful. Because you're like, that took very minimal effort and I did this super rad thing. And then when you do something a little more complicated, And then it has a big payoff. Like, that's even better.
Yeah. And I'd say it was almost kind of underutilized in the game, but the moments where the ninja run also was like it let you parkour just by like
Yup.
running across stuff. Like there would be like a tiny gap in like a wall or something that you could fit through, and if you run at it, then Ren just like dives straight through it.
Yup.
Or like slides under like a small wedge or something. And there's like all these context sensitive animations and everything, and so it's just like it's impressive.
It's definitely an impressive piece of like technological. It was definitely, and I can imagine like at the time that this came out,
Yeah.
how huge that had to have been.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because like the other thing that came out at the time was the first Last of Us game. That came out the same year as this, and on the one hand, you look at Last of Us and you're like, oh, that's like way better in terms of quality, and like the way the character models look are just a lot more realistic and things. But it's also like they didn't have the budget like Naughty Dog did, and still pulled something off that holds up to like today's standard of video games.
Well, not only that, but I think like also just like the cinematic level that like this hits of like this game feels like just a big dumb action movie, which is really fun.
Yeah. And this will kind of transition me into something something Sonic the Hedgehog related.
Hey.
And here's the thing. This one is not a tangent this time. This is not me just like, oh, we got to bring up Sonic because it's mandatory. No, this is an important part of what I want to talk about with this game. I want Platinum Games to make a Sonic game.
I need that.
Having seen what this type of game does, not the violence and the edginess. I mean, if they wanted to make Shadow the Hedgehog 2, that would almost be like funny in its own way.
Oh my! I'm just imagining this game, but just Shadow the Hedgehog,
but with
instead
Shadow.
of Raiden.
Oh, that would be nuts. And that's the funny thing about this is that this game actually kind of reminds me of Shadow the Hedgehog in a lot of ways. Especially in terms of like its tone and everything, but like here's the thing. I'm not talking about like the violence and the edginess and the brooding and the rules of nature. Like not that. I don't want that in Sonic. But I'm saying like I want Platinum to make a game like this for Sonic with like real like cinematic flair, context-sensitive animations, dynamic music, and just this very grandiose feeling of, like, you know, you're playing as Sonic, you're being awesome the whole time, you're doing stylish stuff. Give him maybe one or two new abilities that really allow you to do something flashy. Maybe, I know a lot of people didn't like Sonic Heroes because it included more combat elements than most Sonic games have. And so I don't think they should go hard on like combat necessarily, but just like give us something real flashy and roller coastery and like a Sonic game that really plays with your emotions.
There were a lot of moments in this in this game that I was like, dude, if that were in a Sonic game, this would have looked so sick. Like that bit where you're like running across like the various missiles and stuff, like jumping from. I was like, Platinum could make something really good with that franchise.
Heck, they could just make you like homing attack chain across like missiles over this huge drop or something, or like
so cool.
There's one especially like it's like one of the first cutscenes in the game where like Raiden is running like super fast because he's a cyborg man who's super fast. And then he turns a corner by sticking his hand in the ground and sliding, and like sparks fly out of his feet. And I just remember seeing that and thinking like, man, if Sonic did that, like
Well, the other thing you brought up too is like the way that this story is presented and like the pacing of it is very reminiscent of Sonic Adventure 2, which is something that we've praised like a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Just like between us, like the pacing that they do that, and like how it gives you a cutscene and then it just gets you to the gameplay. It gets to the point.
Mm-hmm. And it's like everything that happens in a cutscene like progresses things in some way for the most part. Except for maybe like jokes, but like it's got good humor and everything too. So
yeah, no, that's something I was gonna bring it up later. But like one of the most positive things I could say about this game is its humor is so good.
mm-hmm.
Like I adored the humor in this game, and it was very much needed because like my stomach was doing so many flips during it because of the gore. That I was like, okay, I need a reason to laugh.
And we had quite a few laughs during this playthrough.
Oh man, yeah, that was some good deep belly laughs too, like the kind that like you don't ever fully recover from.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess for the most part, that's what I want to say about gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe once we get into final thoughts, like there's still a few points I haven't made, but I think those would be more appropriate for final thoughts.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, something I forgot to mention just on presentation when I was talking about how the game looked good. The character model, like everyone's character design, is solid in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's every single one of them just oozes personality, and you can take one look at them and you know exactly what that character is about.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, like Raiden is fabulous. Like I love the fact that like Raiden wears heels.
Yeah.
And they're also for combat. Like he holds his sword, he catches knives with them. Like
he basically uses the heels as like an opposable thumb. And they're
like they're just not there to make him look even more fabulous than he already is. Like he is a force to be reckoned with because of that design, and I think that's great.
Mm-hmm. It almost kind of involves the Bayonetta way of doing it, because I remember seeing Bayonetta with like, oh, she's got like guns on her heels that she can shoot with, and I was like, oh, that's fun, that's kind of interesting. But as soon as I saw that it was like a heel that you could grip with, I was like, okay, that's great.
And like not just Raiden, but like everyone in this game, like, you know, especially the final boss in particular is such a. We'll talk about
it's
the
such
final
a
boss
that.
later. We'll talk about him later.
I think maybe the only sour point, I think even the character models all look extremely good and lifelike for the time that they were made. And because of the fact that like they're cyborgs and stuff, it almost kind of covers up like a lot of the cracks. In what they're doing, like in making it look more realistic, because it just kind of looks like, oh, it's a funky robot suit that he's in, but it's like a human guy in there. The only part that kind of doesn't work with the animation is maybe like the lip sync and the mouths.
A little bit.
That's the one thing about it that kind of like takes me out of it and makes it not look realistic. But at the same time, it lends to some great humor, because like a lot of the bad guys like smiles.
I know exactly which one you're thinking of.
Everyone knows the Jetstream Sam one. I'm like, even before that, there's one with Sundowner, where like he has this huge, like nasty, grinchy, toothy grin, and it's just, you see that and you're just like, this game looks amazing.
I think we saw that, and that was when we started calling him Alex Jones.
Right. 'Cause it's that's what he is. Oh man. All right. Shall we move on to the story then?
Yeah, let's talk about this bananas story.
Yeah. So we did have to re-record a little bit of the beginning, so I forgot if this one actually has any sort of a spoiler warning, so I'll just kind of repeat what I said then, and if it is in the podcast twice, that's more view time for me. Hooray.
Hey.
But yeah, if anything we've talked about with this game is like interesting to you and you want to have the story not spoiled for you, then we're going to talk about it. We're a little less strict on like, oh, like don't do this, like don't get the spoilers for the game, cause like I don't know, the story is just all over the place anyway. It's a big dumb action plot, and none of what we describe really spoils like the cinematics of it and like the really cool action shots or anything. That's still something you can appreciate. That said, this game does take a few crazy turns.
Yeah.
And so definitely we'll leave you with that warning that there are some very heavy themes if you're planning on playing this and you don't know anything about it. It's this is not appropriate for people of younger ages. The plot can get pretty dark and disturbing in a few moments.
It was not appropriate for me, and I went through it, and so it's left me with very mixed feelings.
And so we're not even saying just like underage. Like if you're more sensitive to mature content, like please stay away from this one.
There's no shame. There's no shame in that. Like
there's no shame in skipping this one.
We had to sit there and discuss if we were going to continue.
Yeah.
For me, just because it hit on some themes which we'll talk about in the story. But
right.
Yeah.
With that said, the only point where we're gonna like do one more big spoiler warning is before the final boss. Because after we've talked about this, like up to the point of the final boss, and it does sound like something you're going to want to play, you do not want the final boss spoiled for you. It is the most ridiculous thing I have ever seen in a video game ever in my life. I'm not kidding. I have not seen anything in a video game that has like been more like bonkers. What the heck is going on? And so it's like, if you're interested in trying this, you owe it to yourself to not get that spoiled.
Yeah, I'll say, as someone who went in blind, it was absolutely worth going in blind.
And that was the main thing that I was gunning for with showing you this game. I was like, he hasn't had the final boss spoiled yet, so I gotta show at least this to him.
Yeah.
And so that much I will say, like, we'll put a bigger spoiler warning, but like if you're just listening around, like I don't think you're gonna miss too much by listening to us talk about the general plot beats, and we're not even gonna cover everything. But with all that said, tell me, David, how did you feel about this game's story?
Yeah, like I said, the gore was a big like shock to me jumping in. But like the opening was really good, it very quick, like I was amazed at how quickly it set everything up with just like, all right, here are the bad guys, this is what they're doing, go stop them. And like the opening was super good. I loved Metal Gear Ray as like a first boss.
Yeah.
Because like that, if I'm not mistaken, like that's like an end game boss in like other Metal Gear games. And all right. From
the Jimothy Ross video, the final boss of every other Metal Gear game shows up as the first boss of this game to teach Raiden the rules of nature.
Yeah. I will say Rules of Nature is like the one song that goes a little harder than like what I normally enjoy. But even then, like I was like, this is a good song. That fight was awesome. It was the bit that when we were fighting him, and like Raiden just lifts him up and like suplexes him, and you just shouted like, "Mass is just a number."
Yeah. So that was one. That's in reference to the Oni Plays playthrough. During that same fight, while they were watching like the madness of fighting a freaking massive Metal Gear as this tiny guy with a sword, I believe it was Tomar. He said mass is just a number, and they all had a good laugh. And then they saw the scene of Raiden grabbing by the blade and lifting this entire Metal Gear and suplexing it. And Lyle just shouts, "Mass is just a number!" It's so good.
So hard. But like that fight was so cinematic, and I was just like, oh, dude, this is cool.
Mhm.
Not to mention a great way to like set the expectation of like this is the power scaling that we're
Yup.
looking at. That like, this thing that like I'm sure gave people plenty of trouble in any other Metal Gear game.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is your introduction, and Raiden beats it, and then gets his butt handed to him by I was laughing because he's Brazilian. We kept calling him Tio Sam.
Tio Sam. Yep. I guess before we go any further with stuff about Sam, I do have to apologize for a slight amount of cultural appropriation that may have happened. Because so here's the thing. We were like, he's from Brazil, and so obviously like Portuguese would be like his language or whatever. We don't know Portuguese, but we both know Spanish, and he's kind of like a Spanish character. So we made a lot of jokes in Spanish about him. I confess, I went and looked up some language statistics about Brazil.
Yeah.
Spanish is, first of all, not even the most common of like second languages for people to learn there. About 4% of the population speaks Spanish. Like overall. So like they don't speak Spanish there at all, and we were making all these Spanish jokes.
Well, part of why it's so funny to me is because I have this story, and I'll tell this, is like when I used to work at a car wash. We had this customer come in, and the owner's like, "Hey, David, like, we need you to go translate for this guy because nobody else here speaks another like a second language. They don't know what he's saying." So I was like, "Okay." So I go over and greet him in Spanish, and he starts speaking to me in Portuguese, and like Portuguese is like 40% Spanish. Like, there's some similarities, but there is enough difference there to be like, this is not the same language.
Right. And the main thing about it, Portuguese written kind of looks like Spanish. Portuguese spoken does not really sound like Spanish.
No. And so that's why it was so funny, because they're like, "Oh yeah, David speaks Spanish." I'm like, he's not speaking Spanish. And so I had to like fake a conversation with this customer and like find out what he was asking them.
You're really just like
and like
habla español, please.
Well, yeah. So like he spoke a little bit of English and then Portuguese. I speak English and
Spanish.
What I remember of Spanish, and so like through that we were kind of able to BS like a conversation and like guess at what the other person was saying. And so that's why, like, when I'm like, he's Brazilian, it just brought back all of those memories of that. And so it just brought all of the Spanish out of me.
Oh, that's funny. There it is, a Tradin Faves exclusive.
Yeah.
A fun story. So returning to the rules of nature. Number 1, if you see a tree frog, eat it. Number 2, if you see a Metal Gear, suplex it. Oh, man. But yeah, so like they have that whole crazy first fight with the Metal Gear, and you're like, wow, this game's insane. And then they make you fight it a second time because you only cut off one of its arms.
Yeah.
And it's like, this game is more insane. And then you're like, okay, so like, that's what all the enemies are going to be like, big and imposing, right? And then you encounter the barcode bandits. That is such a funny detail to me, that Sundowner just barcode on his forehead.
If you had called them that instead of the bad guys when we were first playing the game, like, that would have stuck the whole playthrough.
You have no idea. I was holding back so many references to that video, because I was like, I want our experience of this game to be ours. But, like, I was thinking all the punchlines as, like, all the scenes were coming up. It's just so he's got what's his name, Prime Minister Namani, like he's choking him and he's like, they tried to scan me at a Walgreens and I freaking hate Walgreens. Oh man. But it's like you get to see the bad guys in this opening and like just the personality is just flying off of them the instant you see them. Just like it's Sundowners like, all I'm saying is give war a chance. It's just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, well, and even like, because there's that fight with Sam.
Yeah.
And like, so you beat Metal Gear, like a Metal Gear Ray, and then Sam obliterates you.
It's like not even a competition. He
To
just
the point where
destroys you.
like you've lost an eye, you've lost an arm, and Sam is just kind of pushing you around and just like, nah, I'm just having fun.
He's just teasing you, like, before he kills you. So I will say with that, and maybe this is kind of more gameplay talk, but as we all know, whether or not we played the game, we all watched Aaron Hansen's Sequelitis, where he talks about Mega Man X. So I would imagine I'm not talking about any crazy spoilers because it's the opening stage of the game and everybody's seen that video. But he goes on about the fight against Vile and how it's like you don't know if it's scripted or not or if you're supposed to lose. This game here does that again, and it's very well executed the way it's done. Because everything's been beatable up to that point. And so you assume that Sam is the same. And then he slowly just starts, like, unloading more and more crud on you until it becomes this extreme, like, one-sided curb stomp of a fight.
Yeah, dude.
Also, can I just say, it's, like, subtle, but one of the things during that fight, I don't know if you could tell this, because, again, I was, like, streaming the gameplay to you through Discord, but, there's a part, like, during the fight where, like, he'll, like, I think if you hit him with something and he blocks it, then he jumps onto the side and, like, digs his hand into the wall of the tunnel, and you see, like, sparks flying while he's doing it.
Oh,
And
I
then he,
do
like,
remember you showing me that.
yeah, and then he, like, jumps back onto the train and does this, like, slam move, and it's just so, like, oh, it's not just cutscenes, like, the gameplay.
Environments where, like, all of this happens, really, like, solid locations for a fight.
It's insanely cool. Like, this opening is just... I don't know, I'm gonna repeat myself a lot, but it's exactly what I want in a Sonic game. Like... Oh, man. It's so good, though. Like you said,
and then...
Rules of Nature is a song that's, like, the first one we're introduced to in the chapter. It's a little heavy. I kind of prefer just the instrumental. Because, like, the instrumentation's really cool, but, like, the lyrics are kind of... You know...
They scream Rules of Nature over and over again.
No, they scream Rules of Nature when the fight starts getting good.
Yeah.
I think it works perfectly fine in-game. And one of the things I admit that I do like about it, so it's like the opening song. It's kind of the live and learn of this game.
Yeah.
In a sense, like, it's the big, like, poster song for the game. The thing that I do like is the opening line of the song is the time has come to an end. And so it's like, it's not just a cliche, it's a mashing of two cliches. So it's like, you hear that, and you know exactly what you're getting out of the soundtrack. Like, oh, this is gonna take all the, like, the hammy action movie cliches, and it's gonna be proud of them. Like... It's a portmanteau of, like, generic, like, epic one-liners. And so, like, I do like it for that, and the guitar solos are good, but I probably wouldn't just, like, listen to that on my own time and be like, oh yeah, this is a bop.
Yeah, usually when I listen to it, it's when I'm listening to, like, a whole playlist of, like, all
same.
the songs.
Same.
You know what does have a good song, though? The next boss.
Very much does. So the next chapter after you're eased into the game.
Yeah, eased. More like thrown out of a helicopter and said, "Figure it out."
Basically. So the next character we meet, and one of the most important characters to the plot, and I'm gonna go ahead and spoil this now, a personal favorite of mine is Bladewolf.
Bladewolf is super cool.
Yep, and with his specific theme song, "I'm my own master now." I really like that track. I admit, like, it wasn't one that immediately caught me out of the soundtrack on my first go through of the game, but like really thinking back to it now, it's like, oh, this one's so good.
The banter between Bladewolf and Raiden, like right there at the beginning, is so good because Bladewolf just does not take any of Raiden's crap.
Mm-hmm.
Like Raiden like pokes fun at him and he's like, "Oh wow, what a very intelligent AI," and then like Bladewolf is just like, "My memory gets wiped if I fail, so I'm going to kill you." like he just doesn't back down.
Exactly. It's like the specific exchange that I really like. Raiden's like, "Oh, you know so much, huh? What's the meaning of life? Why are we here?" And Bladewolf's like, "I'm here to kill you."
Yeah, it's just like, dude, he's so. Not to mention like how intimidating he is. Like, like the whole time that he's talking, he's like dragging this like chainsaw weapon across the ground, like, basically being like, you know, like, I am better than you.
Yeah. So you know how like the scene starts with like you're walking through that hallway, and then you just see like the saw come through.
Almost taking Raiden's chin. Because everyone wants Raiden's chin.
Because everybody wants Raiden's chin. There's a thing I saw about that. I saw somebody like edit that cutscene. Have you seen that clip from Looney Tunes where Bugs Bunny has like a saw and he just cuts off like the entirety of the state of like California, and it just like slides off the map? Somebody took that clip where like the chainsaw comes in and then just edits in Bugs Bunny with the saw.
Oh my gosh, that's so good.
I think that one was Oni Plays. I will say, sure
regardless of my feelings about this game, the meme community behind it has been so glorious.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so like they just come in swinging with this Bladewolf fight, and it's not even like the boss of this chapter. It's just one of the fights along the way, and it's like, holy moly!
He's so Bladewolf is so cool, and like that was kind of the thing, was that I was starting to expect that like all of the big bosses would be robots, and then like from then on out, it's like it's all people.
Yeah. Well, and that one is also an interesting subversion, too, because the first robot you fight is Metal Gear Ray, which is this massive thing. Bladewolf is just this tiny little doggo.
Robot dog.
And yet he's, like, tougher than Metal Gear Ray. It's another case of, like, the power scaling.
Mass is just a number, dude.
It really is. But yeah, you continue on through there, and you know, you fight some mooks that are less interesting than a freaking wolf with a chainsaw for a tail. But then Raiden finds the most horrifying thing ever: a woman.
Okay, I actually really liked Mistral a lot.
Yeah,
I don't know what it was about her. Like, I think it'll come up later, but I think because this was before like my other issues with the game came up, and so I was still invested enough that like I don't know what it was about her. I really liked her as a character. Her motivations were interesting. Like, well, like it was weird, and especially looking back, having finished the game, and how she's like, you and me are a lot alike, and like I'm like, if Raiden had met her later in this adventure, he might actually have agreed with her.
Yeah.
But I like that, you know, that whole characterization of how like she and Raiden have essentially the same backstory. The difference is that she gave in to like no, I'm a killer, and I'm a really good killer, and I enjoy killing. And that was like, I think specifically you said, like, at that moment, you're like, and that's our reason to, like, stop her. Because, like you see that, like, moment in Raiden's eyes where he's like, oh, I kind of feel sorry for you.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, no, you're still a deplorable person.
Well, I think it's specifically, like, she drops the first F-bomb in the game.
Yeah.
and I was like, and that's the moment. Like,
yeah.
That's our justification for killing her.
And that was the thing, too, was, like...
But, yeah.
She wasn't, like, overly sexualized.
Yeah.
Until she was, which made me very upset.
Right. But, I mean, to be fair, that was in the DLC as well.
Well, yeah.
So it didn't hit immediately at first.
Because, like, you were like, this is a woman in a padded winter jacket.
In a
game, yeah, in a game directed by Hideo Kojima. And I was like, what the heck? But even, like, when she ditched the jacket and, like, I don't know what it is, like, it's like all those little, like, grabby hand, like, mooks, and how, like, she had, like, the multiple arms and, like, the spear made out of the arms that was also, like, a whip. And just, like, the fact that, like, because you, like, the fight starts and you immediately, like, hack them all off, and I was like, alright, so that was nothing, but then more of those little mooks came in and she got them back, and I was like, this is a solid design for a character. Like, this is so cool. And then not to mention
5 different Overwatch characters at once.
Well, like, and especially the location for the fight, just that big industrial playground where you're like running across like the silos and stuff. Like, it was so cool.
Yeah, because you start on like a helipad. And then you end up, like, jumping around to all the different locales, and then you, like, bust in through a window in an area, and it's just like, oh, this is awesome.
I love, like, the movement in that fight. And not to mention, when you take her down, there's, like, that chemical stuff that freezes her in place, so you, like, she turns into a statue and you shatter her, which was really, like... It was still gory, but it was, like, one of the least gory kills, and so I was like, okay, I could tolerate that a little bit better.
Yeah.
Than, like, most of what we've done.
That's a good point, too. Yeah.
And so, I don't know, like, it left a very strong impression. Like, I just remembered, like, liking her a lot, and then she's gone, and I'm just like, well... Glad I got to meet that character.
Well, that's that.
And then Travis Willingham.
Yeah.
I don't know what his actual name was. I just heard the voice. I was like, that's Travis.
The moment I heard him screaming, I was like, that's Travis.
I'm like, this is Travis doing a Russian accent.
And it works.
It was really good.
Yeah, so one of the things that I want to say about the Mistral fight, and this actually will segue perfectly into the music, in terms of the sound mixing, this one especially showcases, like, the brilliance of the way that they pace the songs. Because generally the way the fight is paced, if you're a beginner, then, you know, you may spend a bit more time on the first phase. But kind of the way that it's paced and the way that the fight goes, you about, like, get through the first phase of the fight where you're on the helipad, like, while the song is starting up and doing more of the metal stuff. And then by the time you get to the point where you're jumping around the industrial areas, is usually more like the parts where the pianos come in. And then with that, they specifically pace it. So after you beat the second phase, they have an explosion that carefully hides the transition in the music to specifically set the song to a certain point. So that way, when you get to phase 3, it starts with the vocals when it gets to the chorus. It is all, like, brilliantly paced out. They hide the transition flawlessly between, like, where the song goes and where it needs to be.
It's really well done.
And then, like, you get in there, you're in the room, you're having your stare down, and then it goes back to gameplay. And then immediately the chorus hits you with the, finally found what I was looking for. And it's just like, oh, it's so good.
Yeah, it was solid.
And honestly, one of my favorite songs in the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Stranger I Remain is really awesome.
It's so good.
It's like they use, because it's got the metal and the edge that you expect. It's got like the techno in it and everything. But then when it gets to that midway point where it's like the pianos with like the reverb on them, and
Mm-hmm.
like it has like strings that kind of sound like this ghostly like haunted house sort of feel to it, but combined with the metal, it creates this weird like disturbing yet beautiful sound to it that's just like, oh, I love this.
I was gonna save this for when we talked about favorites, but this is one of the songs that I'd picked as one of my favorites,
Uh-huh.
and because it's also one of the only tracks that has a female vocalist.
I think it
And
actually is the only
yeah,
one
it
that
is.
does.
It's the only one,
Yeah.
and it stands out from like the rest of the soundtrack as just like different. It's really cool.
And again, it does the thing where like the lyrics tell a deeper amount of storyline and backstory
Yeah,
to the character
you
than
learn
they.
a lot about her from those lyrics.
It's like it's they don't have to waste your time explaining their backstory in a cutscene very much, because they can just do it with the lyrics and you can listen to that on your own time. But it keeps the flow of the gameplay and it keeps her being, an intimidating presence. And so it's just, it's beautiful.
Yep. And then we
Um,
moved on to the next section.
Then we move on to chapter 2. In terms of the boss, it's just a giant mech and it plays Rules of Nature again, so there's not really anything to talk about there. But you want to start us off talking about?
So this is where my second issue with the game came in. Was the issue of like what they did with the children.
Yeah.
Specifically because like there's you find out about like, oh, there's this area where they're abducting children, and like we talk to one and we're gonna go save him, and then he vanished, like we lose sight of him. And like, so like there's like this thing of like, all right, we're on a deadline to save the children, but then you realize that like they've been doing this for a while, and it's that room where you see that they've been harvesting like the children's brains.
And they just have like tons of jars with
Of like, and like they're not like they're like robot looking brains, but like it's the brains and then the eyes that just like real, like, again, it's that gore factor of like the eyes like looking around that like really unsettled me. And the fact that it was children like really like crossed a line for me that I was like, I feel sick. I'm very uncomfortable right now.
Yeah, because that's kind of the thing. Other like sci-fi things have done like, oh, the brain in the eyes in the jar before. Like that's been done a lot of times. But it's like there's something really sickening about the fact that it's kids. That's just
and the twisted way that like they try and justify it too, but they're like, oh, these are like homeless kids on the street, like we're giving them a better future. And it's like, you're still doing some very messed up stuff.
That is the thing. Every like bad guy tries to have their own justification for it or whatever. I guess we'll talk about Monsoon when we talk about Monsoon. His is the only one that even comes close to making sense, but like anytime they're justifying, oh, we're helping the economy, or we're stopping wars, or we're doing this or that, or like starting wars for the good of whatever, or like any justification they could spin, it's like, but you're kidnapping kids and harvesting their organs.
Children and doing this to that, and it's never mind the fact that like all of these people are okay with that. And it was just incredibly sickening to me.
And so, and that's the thing with this as well, like I was kind of alluding to at the beginning, that cutscene was one of the first things that I'd seen about this game. And that's why I took, like 6 years of not looking at it.
Well, and then the other thing for me too is that like before leading up to this, it kind of felt just like, here's your mission, here's your assignment. It has ties to Desperado. And then this is the plot point that like sticks for the rest of the game. Is that they're taking children, they're scooping out their brain, putting it in a computer, and training them to be super soldiers. And So like that like uncomfortableness carried through the rest of the game. Like I was sitting there and I was like, okay, we saved the kids that were there that were gonna get, roboted, and we saved the one kid that we met. But like there was still like, well, there's still more of them. And like it became like this that really like upset me and made me very uncomfortable.
Yeah. It's one of those, I mean, it's got Metal Gear written all over it. It's just the kind of bonkers storytelling that Metal Gear always has.
It absolutely is.
But it's just so sickening.
Well, and even still, like, leading into the next chapter and how they're like talking to Raiden about like, you can't just go run up and like start a fight with these guys. Like, they do this all like legally through like for like medical purposes, and it's like, you are still kidnapping children in a heart. Like, how is that legal? How by any stretch of the imagination? And that was why, like, Raiden's line is my favorite line in the whole game. Was he was like, being legal doesn't make it right, and I was like, thank you, Raiden. That was so freaking good.
And that's the we'll get to more about like Raiden's character and even some of the hangups that I have with him. But like the fact that from that moment on, he was like the only one thinking logically here about like, we need to stop this. Like, I don't care what's legal. Like, they're not doing this to any more kids.
I don't care how big this company is. Like,
I at least definitely had some respect for Raiden, because I was like, if I had ultimate cyborg enhancement powers that could make me suplex giant robots and stuff, and I saw that this was going on, you bet I'd be right there on the front lines trying to stop this crap, because it's...
Absolutely.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and Raiden's character, we'll talk about that in a bit.
I will also be honest, a key factor in me recommending that we play this game, I had forgotten about this scene.
Yeah.
Because I was already at the point where I'd played through the game, I was replaying it to try and, like, master things or whatever, and I was, like, getting used to all the gameplay stuff, and so I was, like, not watching the cutscenes again. If I had remembered that this was in here, I definitely would have thought twice about recommending this.
It's alright. And again, it's... Even then, this wasn't the make or break it point for me.
Right.
Because, like, Raiden's heart was in the right place. And that was like the thing where I was like, alright, I'm compelled to keep cheering for this hero. Because very much, like, what is going on, this is just wrong. And I'm sickened and disgusted by it. I want to end it.
Yeah, and that was definitely the thing. There were a lot of moments like analyzing Raiden early on, like just you like going fresh into the game and looking at stuff. Like you'd see Raiden do something cool or something like heroic. And I think at one point, you said to me, you're like, I can see why you like Raiden. And I didn't know how to respond.
This line. I think it was that line.
I didn't know how to respond to that, because I was like, I don't. For reasons I'm not sure if I should spoil yet.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that, because I think that's the next
so
thing.
then the next chapter, Mile High, is the one that ends with the monsoon fight. I'm trying to think what all happens here. So this is the one
where we police brutality.
You get to Denver. Which also that's just funny to me because of the fact that we've been to Denver many times. We have family, like we had family who lived there and would visit like a lot. So I would say it was not quite the same as the experience of seeing like Salt Lake City in The Last of Us, because we are, Utahns through and through. But and, like, the historical accuracy was completely not even there.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, it's in Denver, and it's, like, a generic city. But,
you're just like, okay, sure. I forgot that it was Denver, like, literally 5 minutes after the fact.
That's why I'm wondering what people who are from Denver thought of this game.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Because it's not historically accurate, but it was just interesting to me that it took place, like part of the story takes place in a city that I know. But yeah, the big thing about this one that they're building up towards, like, so you're fighting the police or whatever because they're after you because the bad guys who are unjustifiably doing evil, um,
Like blatantly evil
yep,
things, but through whatever legal means they've
yeah.
BS'd into it.
And
Like,
the main thing they explain in the previous chapter is that they have the senator of Denver backing all of this.
yeah.
And so basically that's why they've got the police on their side. Because I guess a senator just controls everything. In a
I don't know,
city.
corrupt politician,
Yeah.
whatever.
It's
Like,
it's the tired commentary on corrupt politics that Japanese games always
really, what
seem
it
to
is just the excuse so that you have more enemies to fight.
right. But they go somewhere with it,
They
because
do.
you're not just fighting like the soldiers of Desperado. You're specifically fighting the police of, of this city, and then you run into good old Jetstream Sam again, and he tells you, he's like, yeah, you've been hacking away at all these quote bad guys for so long.
And that's the thing, because Raiden kept pointing that out, that he's like, these are children. They don't have a say. Like, they didn't get a say, but like all of these adults, they made their choice. And like Raiden kept saying that. I don't know how I didn't pick up on this earlier.
They really wanted to hammer that point in for a specific reason. Sam points out, like, oh, listen to, like, I forget what it is. It's some, like, pseudoscience BS anyways, but he's saying,
The
like,
nanomachines
you
or
listen to
whatever.
the sounds of, like, the pain inhibitors in the nanomachines or whatever, and like, Raiden starts to hear the thoughts of all the people that he's fighting, and he basically finds out, like, these actually are, like, unwilling cyborgs that are being forced into battle, like, who are just, like, they need the money to provide for their families, or, like, they're, like, they're stuck in these horrible situations, and they're just they're forced to be fighting, and they're all getting sent right to Raiden, who is,
The meat grinder.
a living blender.
Yeah.
And you've just been hacking away at all these people carelessly without realizing that, like, a lot of them were forced to do this against their own will. And this part of the chapter is really interesting, and it felt like they were building up to something that was going to make a really good point about violence. I say was.
Yeah, well, and especially because, like, Raiden just got off the phone with that kid that he saved, and he was like, you don't want to kill people. Like, this is not a world you want to be a part of. Speaking from experience, because Raiden's like, I hate doing this, but I am the only one who can do this, and so that's why I'm doing it.
And it's interesting, too, because, well, to go back to the Jimothy Ross video, there's the thing, like, Sam is like, you can't just gerrymander all your opponents. They're people, too. What will you do now, Raiden? And then he stands there for a minute. And he just murders them all. Like, it sends you into a fight, like, after having this revelation that these guys are unwilling opponents, it puts you in a fight and forces you to tear through them all super easily
in order to stay alive, because they're all aiming to kill you.
Yeah, but it's interesting because they're the police enemies, which are the easiest enemies to kill in the game. So they just really give you this sense of, like, a one-sided fight.
Men marching to their deaths against their will.
Yep. Fighting battles they don't understand. Anyway.
Yeah, and so I'm right there with you, where, like, it felt like they were building towards something. And they were.
And it's like you have that moment after the fight where, Raiden's visibly and control-wise very depressed. Was it he speed runs the 5 stages of grief?
That's so good.
Oh, I love that joke. But yeah, you have that moment where, like, you don't really have any control, and it's just like, okay, maybe it's best to just avoid combat, and then you march your way over to, like, the big building where Monsoon is. And I don't know.
That's
I'll let you do the talking about this part of the game.
like, because we get our big revelation about like it's the culmination of like, all right, so we're in this very impossible situation where like, you know, we're being forced to fight people who don't even want to fight us. And how do we how do we cope with that? How do we handle that? And their answer is to ruin Raiden's character. Like, I realized that this is a thing from previous Metal Gear games, and like, you know, this is a character thing. But like, you know, Jack the Ripper was his nickname because he. It's the fact that he's like, you know, okay, I've been lying to myself. I actually do enjoy killing. You know, I enjoy a good fight, and that's where like his power to keep doing this comes from. That did not sit right with me, and combined with like the other two things, the gore and the children in danger, and now I'm like, I don't even want to root for our hero.
Right, you're like, this is the guy that's gonna save all the kids.
Like that just took me out of the experience. And so like it's really upsetting to say that like I didn't care for Monsoon because I was so checked out of the story by that point. And it didn't help too that like while Monsoon is on his big monologue about memes,
Yeah.
there's that guard like, trying to pet the cat, and you're looking at that, and I'm having this whole like mental shutdown, and I'm just like, I don't even know what's going on at this point.
I'm kind of sorry I did that, but also it's a guy with a cat, so like of course I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, believe me.
I'm
After
almost...
our Chrono Trigger episode, I was like, why didn't I see this coming?
Yeah,
but like, it was very much like I feel like I didn't give Monsoon a proper shot as a character because at that point. And we'd done this all in like one sitting.
Yeah, we did everything from this point up to like where we're talking. All this has been still in the first session of us playing the game.
Yeah, and I was just like, I was so checked out at that point. And like part of it too is that like even all of these elements, you know, aren't like deal breakers for me, but it's because I've seen this same thing done in a different story and handled better.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to draw attention to that is Tales of the Abyss.
Yeah.
I don't feel like this is a spoiler because there's so much more to that game, but one of the reasons I really enjoyed that game, first off, there is an on-screen death of a child. In that game.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal.
Significantly, like it wasn't like gory, but it was still like unsettling. Not just a child, but like a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And in addition, there's a part in the story where your main character, who is this very sheltered person, in an act of self-defense, this guard. The soldier runs up and he kills him just in self-defense. And the main character has this whole mental breakdown of like, I just killed a man. You know, he's a living being. And even to the point where like, you can't play as this character at certain points, because he refuses to kill another human being. He's like, monsters, whatever, I'll fight those. They're mindless killing machines. But I'm not going to kill another person. And the way they resolve that is that, you know, one of his allies gets hurt protecting him, and they flat out tell him, look, we're soldiers. We hate this as much as you do, but we don't have that kind of luxury because if we stand aside, then the people we care about will get hurt. And so that's why we have to fight them. And then from that point on, when you play as that character, the main character, and you kill like a human guard enemy, he has a victory line of when it's showing like the results screen, and he just says, I'll do whatever it takes. You know, it's this very like reserved, like, I don't want to do this, but I will. And so, you know, contrasting that to just Raiden being like, you know what, I actually am okay with murder. Like, I kind of enjoy this. I kind of get off a little bit on being in pain.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me so out of it, because it was like, man, why am I rooting for this guy? You know, what kind of hero is this?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that it never really gets resolved.
Yeah.
In the story. Like that just Raiden is like, all right, I found my reason to keep fighting. Time to keep fighting. And you know, like, Raiden's in the right, but it's such like a flimsy reason. And so like that was where like I was like, I think we sat down and I was like, I don't even know if we can finish this game.
Yeah.
You know, and thankfully we did, because I was like after sitting on it for a bit, I was like, I want to at least finish it so that I have, you know, because I'm like, if nothing else, I have a lot to say about this topic and how it was this perfect combination of like things that were just going too far for me that made me not enjoy the story.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a shame too, because like Monsoon was such a cool like designed villain. The fact that that fight was just the beginning of Sonic Adventure, further cementing that Platinum Games just needs to make a Sonic game.
I did. Oh my gosh, you're right.
No, like legitimately, it's the Chaos Zero fight. You're in that square in front of a giant building while it's raining, and he's jumping around from the corners of the rooftop.
Yeah. And he's got the stretchy arms. And the...
Yes, it's just the Chaos Zero fight.
Oh, that is so funny. I have never thought about that. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Let's see. I have some things to say about this plot point as well, and like the whole thing with Monsoon and everything. I will have to be careful to not make a rant that matches the length of yours in the interest of time. But I too was extremely disappointed with this part of the story. So the other thing was in watching the Oni Plays playthrough of this, there are points where they get distracted and they go on tangents and they talk about whatever. And so a lot of that was going on while this scene was going on. And so I was a bit more focused on their conversation than what was happening in the game. So I'd pretty much like forgotten about this by the time like I'd bought the game and was going to play it. And even with the stuff with the brains, I had gotten past that because, like you said, there's at least like a moral right, and like
there's a just cause there.
You have the determination to do something about it. But when I got to this point in the game, I was so disappointed with the writing. Honestly, it felt like, again, like we were saying, how like before this point, this felt like the ideal Sonic game almost in terms of like its pacing and its flow, all like the epicness to everything, the cinematic flair. And then in this one cutscene, it just reverts to Shadow the Hedgehog levels of writing.
Oh.
And it's specifically like he does his like not well voice acted evil cackle, and he starts glowing red like he's got Chaos Blast charged up, and like I just saw this and I'm like, you're kidding me. Our main character likes to kill, like, and here's the biggest thing about like Raiden's turn in character here. I'm not even completely mad that the direction his character takes is that he admits to himself that he enjoys killing. Because that is an aspect of his backstory. He was raised to be a soldier and had a knack for, winning fights and everything. And so the violent life became part of it. Like, I don't mind that so much because it actually makes a point and it tells the story and it's like, wow, look how messed up this guy got because of this lifestyle. And I would just let the game go on that and be like, all right, he's just a flawed but interesting character. It's the fact that he gets the Ripper mode and he delights in the killing, and he's like, oh yeah, murder, and he's slicing through dudes and laughing, and he just turns completely, like, evil in this scene. And then they just shrug it off for the rest of the story.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the heck is this? And then, okay, this is tiny spoilers. This is a thing at the end of the cutscene. But they have their whole thing at the end of the game where they're like, oh, some people think that, you know, Raiden's a bad guy and he's Jack the Ripper and he's just a ruthless murderer. But the Raiden I know is a hero. It's like, cool.
Yeah. I was going to bring that up later at that point, but exactly
that. Feels immensely undeserved and extremely, like, shallow writing for...
It feels hollow, is the way that I was going to phrase it. Because it almost feels like the writers wrote themselves into a corner. Like, you know, by being like, oh no, like, these people are innocent people, and what do we do? And then that was their way out, and it was like the least graceful way they could have done that.
Exactly. And again, that's the other thing. They have that big arc, and that's still kind of like the middle closer towards the end of the game. They had time to take that story somewhere and maybe, like, have Raiden recognize a little piece of humanity left in him and, you know, maybe come to a conclusion. This game brings up some really interesting and I think, honestly, worthwhile themes to explore. Because you play any of your other freaking like cinematic movie whatevers, your Uncharted's, your Tomb Raider or whatever. In Tomb Raider, it's like, oh, they justify Lara Croft's mass murder spree by like, oh, it's self-defense and they're all bad people. Okay. In Uncharted, they don't even justify it. Like, Nate is this demure little puppy dog of a person who's like, we shouldn't fight, and like, whatever is the peaceful option, and like, I guess we have to do this the hard way, and like, oh, but I don't want to fight. And then it cuts to gameplay, and you're a mass murderer who just destroys everything in sight.
Yeah.
It's just like, there's a disconnect. At least here, they're willing to, you know, be honest about the direction of the game, and who knows, maybe gamers who enjoy violent games could get something out of this if they really look at the storyline deeper. It's like, yeah, somebody who, you know, literally makes sashimi out of their enemies, like, they probably will have that baggage with them of that element of like, oh, no, I kind of do like killing. But if they had admitted that it was a problem for Raiden and he was like trying to work through that for the rest of the game, that would be a really interesting story. Even though Raiden wouldn't be in the right, I'd almost be rooting for him because it'd be like an allegory for kicking bad habits.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, they totally could have taken the story that direction and the relatability would have been there.
I felt like they were, and I think part of the reason that they backed out is because they wanted the twist and they wanted it to not be what you would expect, because that's a very Hideo Kojima thing to do.
Right. I guess I should also mention this. This game technically wasn't written by Hideo Kojima. It just had like recommendations from him, and it was written by like a Metal Gear Solid general writing team that worked under him. Or maybe it was Platinum Games writing team. I don't know. I don't know what it was. It wasn't Hideo Kojima specifically, but like either way, it's like, it's the wacky surprise that you're not expecting. But it's just like, really?
I think part of it too is that, like, I don't feel like this is necessarily spoilers, but like, the game does like end on a cliffhanger of what happens to Raiden, and it like very heavily tries to sequel bait that we've never gotten because of the state of the Metal Gear franchise.
Yeah.
And so like, maybe there is more to go and explore.
And it could be the point. That could be what they were working towards, was we'll make a sequel that goes further into this. But you just run that risk with games, because you never know if you're going to get to make a sequel. And it's almost kind of arrogant to think that your story will get a sequel. Like, you kind of have to write your story thinking this could be all there is.
Yeah. needless to say, from this point on to like the rest of the session, I was so checked out.
Yeah.
You know, we got to the end, like the boss, the next boss, and I like by the time you were done, like I didn't even feel any. I was like, cool, just end it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm kind of done for the day.
And it was disappointing because I could feel that energy while we were playing. When we started, we were joking, we were having a good time, we were excited by the
it was
action.
a blast.
We were all in, and I could tell, like, after that point, like, you had nothing in you, and I was like, we should stop, but I don't know.
Well, and it's a shame too, because up next was freaking Alex Jones himself, Sundowner.
Actually, can I say, mostly we talked about the plot point of that. We didn't actually talk about the gameplay of the monsoon fight.
Sorry, like I said, I have less to say about the gameplay because I was checked out and done.
Right.
I was ready to move on, but if you have stuff to say, please.
I do want to say this, and this is actually a fair point. This is a point that I wanted to make. The monsoon fight is really interesting in terms of mechanics, in terms of the character and his powers, how he can separate his body into pieces and everything, and how you can't just dice him into sashimi like the other opponents.
Because he already is. He's Buggy the Clown.
He's Buggy the Clown. He is, like, him and one of the other ones we'll get to are such, like, One Piece characters.
There was a part of me that I was like, I have to look in. I meant to do it before we recorded this, but I was like, I gotta look into the history of, like, where One Piece was at in its story.
Oh, to see if this, like, influenced
to see which came first. Because, like, the similarities were too scary.
Yeah.
Like...
and so that's the main thing. There is a really interesting boss fight to be had against Monsoon. It's one of the, like, the points where the gameplay, like, really does some crazy cool stuff. It's where, though I don't like it because of the story reasons, it's where you get Ripper mode, which is your, you know, your Devil Trigger, your God of War, your Werehog Unleashed mode.
Man, I loved hearing all of those comparisons next to each other. Just Werehog.
Yeah, it's all of those. It's your, like, super form where you get a thing with, like, a gauge that slowly drains. So, like, mechanically, like, a lot of interesting stuff happens here. Even during this fight, you get unlimited meter for, like, your Zandatsu and your Ripper mode and all that. Like, you get it for an unlimited amount of time.
I also, one thing that did make me laugh, though, was how, like, Monsoon was waxing so poetic about, like, life and philosophy and how, like, Jack was just like the... And then just, he's like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna enjoy this. And then just Monsoon's like, alright, like, I know I'm crazy, but, like, you're even crazier than me.
Yep.
Like, let's back up a second.
I'm literally wearing a titanium fedora, and even I think this is edgy. Okay. But yeah, so that's, like, they throw all this, like, great, exciting gameplay stuff, but it comes after the worst point in the story that is such a sour note that it's like, it's hard to get excited about that.
And especially, like, the environment. I love, like, the rain and the mist and stuff. Like, like, it's a cool looking environment.
Yeah, you got the rain, the backdrop of, like, the tall building, and Monsoon's using his Silver the Hedgehog powers to throw all this crazy stuff at you.
It's just Sonic, dude.
It's one of the most Sonic-y parts of the game, but it's just... I will also say, like, his song, Stains of Time, is possibly my least favorite of the boss themes.
Interesting.
And yeah, go ahead.
No. I'm, like... I like it, but, like, there's so many more that just stand out more to me, and so I'm like...
Yeah.
And again, it's because... You know, like we've been saying, that sour point in the story is what really ruined this moment and kept me from enjoying it.
And that honestly could be the reason I don't like the song, maybe. But like I will say, I like the instrumental. Like I'm always down for, like, screaming guitars. It's like the vocals really don't do it for me on this one. And also the fact they rhyme rain with terrain. And I'm like, you can't do that. It's the same last syllable. You can't do that with rhyming, and it just, I don't know. I also think about that when I hear the song. So, I mean, it's
just tell Monsoon his song sucks.
His song sucks
your
because
your memes suck, dude.
your memes end here.
The other thing, memes, and the fact that that was just a trip and a half.
Memes are an integral plot point in this game.
The memes.
Yeah, I guess, so trying to make sense of Monsoon's character, because he is kind of an interesting character. Maybe one of the most interesting bad guys in the game, for the reason that, like, his whole deal is that he's a nihilist. Nihilism, for those who don't know, is the belief that nothing in life matters, that everything is meaningless, that there's no purpose to actions or anything that happens, like there's no purpose to life. That is the point of Monsoon. He's a nihilist, and so unlike the other guys who are trying to find these contrived ways to justify kidnapping and harvesting the organs of kids, which is freaking disgusting, Monsoon is a completely different beast altogether, because he's like, nothing matters. Like, the strong kill the weak, and that's nature. And, like, it doesn't matter one way or the other. It doesn't even matter what you or I do. Like, you could kill me, and that's not morally wrong, because there is no morality. And so it's kind of like, it's interesting in this game with all these, you know, crazy super, what is it? Linkin Park Power Rangers? With all these weird debates on philosophy, and to be fair, Monsoon does debate philosophy as well. But his whole thing is that he's saying, like, if nothing matters, then, like, who freaking cares? So it's kind of like, you know, when you just shrug off everything you're doing like that, I guess you've got a point.
Yeah, like, honestly, out of everyone that you fight in this game, like, he feels the most justified, just because, like, that's just who he is. You're like, well, okay, like, you believe that, I guess that makes sense.
It's
like, I guess I can
really
follow
ridiculous.
your logic at least.
There is a train of thought. Everyone else has to skirt around the fact that they're doing these heinous things. He's just kind of like, that's nature, man.
It's just like, deal with it. It's the way it is right now.
And it is kind of interesting with the direction they take the arc of Raiden. His whole point is that the most powerful thing in the universe is memes. Which is the most hilarious thing out of context. In context, he's using the dictionary definition of meme, which is just anything that's not passed on genetically, but, like, culturally or from one person's example to another. Just, like, things that are passed on from one person to another. And the whole point of this is Desperado and their desire for bloodshed and war. Monsoon is claiming, like, as Raiden kills him, like, I passed this one on to you. Like, now you're fully aware of the fact that you like to kill, and so I've just perpetuated the cycle. And
it's just funny because it's memes.
But it's memes. So
I know. That's another layer of why I was so checked out during this part of the game.
You're like, huh? Memes?
You mean like SpongeBob being like, I'm a head out?
Mm-hmm. Oh, man.
That was me. Yeah. That was my meme.
Yeah.
At that
I'm
point.
a head out. Mine is the, like, SpongeBob at the diner, just, like, with his hands together and, like, oh. Okay, so that's... we're past Monsoon.
We're past Monsoon. There was a level... I think I remember, like, we got a bunch of rocket launchers and, like, dudes running in, and you were just like, nope.
Yeah. So they specifically start up, like, a bunch of, like, tower defense type stuff where you're behind a wall and enemies are pouring in through them. And so they give you a lot of, like, projectile weapons, and I was like, I'm saving these for the boss.
Yeah, that was fun.
And I love that the game lets you do that.
That was fun.
But yeah, basically you get to the top of the tower and
there is one thing. I think it was this part because that was where you hack one of the little arm grabby dudes, and you run around as him.
You know what? That was actually during the sewers level.
Oh, you're right.
We forgot about that, but we might as well talk about it now.
Well, yeah, just like it was the bit of him like trying to plug the USB in and then flipping it upside down and then hitting it.
It's such a good gag.
There's and that was the thing too. Like the thing that kept me going was all of those funny little moments. Like there's the comedy in this game was absolute gold. And I was just like,
really well done.
I loved all of the jokes. Just like Raiden being a master of disguise and then wearing the mariachi outfit. And then literally the two Latino guys are like, is that a mariachi guy? No, it's a cyborg. like completely sees through it.
And then Raiden just gives this like super deadpan adios amigos and then goes in the sewer.
And then not to mention Bladewolf has no disguise.
Yeah. It's just a freaking robot wolf.
You know, around. Or like again, the fact that like almost every fight, like someone goes for Raiden's chin.
Yeah.
You know, like there's so many just like little moments of just comedy that I was like, with as heavy and as dark and depressing as the story had been, like the comedy kept me going.
And even like in the gameplay, there's like the hidden like enemies that are like hiding inside cardboard boxes and things. And you gotta find them all.
I was wondering where he learned that.
You can get a tiny hologram of a beautiful lady to distract people.
So funny.
Oh man, like yeah, I agree with you. The humor in this game is great, honestly. One of the high points. So basically, there's not really anything like too interesting with like the Sundowner level. I guess the main thing is like once you're like almost at the top, how like all the air enemies come in and start like shooting at the building or whatever through the windows. And so there's like this big escape sequence where you can't even fight the enemies because there's so many of them. There's just dudes like spraying bullets everywhere.
Time to ninja run.
Yeah. And then you use like the ninja run to like hop across the dudes that are like with the jetpacks.
Yep.
So all that stuff was pretty neat and a good setup. And then you get to Alex Jones himself.
Dude, that...
He's like, they're putting stuff in the brain jars that's turning the frickin' brains gay.
Yeah, also more brains. That was uncomfortable.
Yeah, that was like the worst because he's like, hey, check this out. And there's like these pillars with like thousands per pillar. Just like,
yeah, no. And he like picks one up and is like waving it around as he's talking to you. I'm just like...
What was it? Like he like picks up the brain, he's giving it pats, and I have to admit this was kind of a funny thing from the Oni Plays playthrough. They're like, no, they're treating the kids well. See, he gets pats, like they get taken care of. It's just like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
serious.
I'll be honest. I don't even think I caught anything of his like explanation for like why he was justified in all of that garbage.
So basically,
I knew I didn't agree with it.
No, I didn't either.
And I was like, whatever, dude. You're a piece of crap and you're going to die by the end of this chapter.
He flashed one of his signature smiles and you're like, haha, funny Gmod smile. And then he started talking and immediately it's just like wrong. Whatever you're saying, it's wrong. Yeah, to explain a little bit of Sundowner's character, basically he has this weirdly like childlike mind, and that's kind of the whole point of like what he's trying to say is like kids are cruel, and basically his whole deal is just that for some reason he really thinks like war and killing is fun. Because he's just, like, really warped.
The thing that Raiden had just come to grips with.
Right?
Why are they fighting again?
Yeah.
Because war is fun.
Because violence breeds violence.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, the whole thing about Sundowner is he's just like this really disturbed guy who just really delights in violence or whatever. And it's interesting because you wouldn't gauge too much about his character, but from his song Red Sun, the lyrics are very poetic, which is extremely not what you'd expect for this guy. It is about that cruelty. Like the lyrics kind of depict this like man and machine like taking over nature and destroying like animals and life and things. And so it does fit with like the really cruel, edgy nature of his character, but it's written in such like a poetic way that like I heard it and I was like, "What? This guy? This theme?"
Yeah, not to mention like the instrumental bit, the guitar solo on that is like one of the best in the whole game.
It's so good.
And I was like, why did he get this one?
Red sun over paradise, red sun. It's just like, this is like cool. Why did this jerkweed?
Yeah. No, and that was his fight had that like interesting shield mechanic, which was
Yeah, he's got like the exploding shield that like if you hit it from the wrong angle, then it like blows up on you. So you gotta like angle your stuff right, and then you gotta like cut off the limbs that are holding the shields. In general, like I feel like out of the bad guys, I don't know, maybe Sam's got the coolest weapon because the freaking high frequency blade is awesome. But like the other bad guy weapon that I think is really cool is Sundowner's. How it's like the scissor thing. How like the one blade hooks into the other, and then he can use it to like snip.
And the blades heat up.
Yeah, and they're like burning blades. It's just like, ugh.
Yeah, for someone who it's a very fitting weapon for him.
And it's Sundowner is definitely the villain that's like maybe aside from like Sam, he's the other villain that they really like build up. And so like getting to finally kill him feels like extremely satisfying.
It would have felt more satisfying, but
if they didn't,
I was gone at that point.
I don't blame you.
That was why like you mutilated him, and I was just like, whatever, dude. Just I don't want to see him anymore.
I just don't want this guy. Well, it's the cool thing about the Sundowner fight as well is instead of doing like the multi-phase thing, he's got like a different phase if you destroy all of his shields, but you don't have to destroy all of his shields. And then he does the thing like he just falls off the tower backwards and then grabs onto the helicopter. And then you get that whole segment where you like ride onto the like the flying thing with the wings and you like fly through the exploding building. That was a neat little moment.
Yeah.
It was just a cool way to break up the gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to just hack him to pieces, which I was just like, you deserve this.
Yeah. No, I noticed that you in particular were like, nah, I don't want any part of you to be visibly recognizable anymore.
Oh man, because he's fun as a bad guy, but he's also just like, oh, he is such a scumbag.
You hate him. You hate him and his whole ideology. You're supposed to.
Yep. And then after that, we get our crazy sequence with Doctor flying the helicopter.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I was looking at it, I forgot about all of Raiden's team minus Doctor. Because Doctor like was physically there actually doing stuff. Like you could have literally taken any character and replaced like Raiden's team member. You could have switched them with each other or replaced them with somebody entirely different and the game would have stayed the same.
Right.
But like Doctor was very memorable. One, for being the insane person that he is, and then two, for that cutscene of him flying the helicopter.
Yeah, that was the moment where I was like, oh, he's not just gonna sit behind a desk and talk to me about stuff. Like, he's involved, and he's like as crazy as we are.
What was the bit where Raiden was like, people say Germans aren't funny?
Oh, yeah, because like Raiden's getting ready to like hop onto one of the enemy ships or whatever, and Doctor is like, have a nice flight.
Yeah.
And people say Germans aren't funny. And it was the most, like, hammy one-liner, and I was just
I
like,
know.
good, more of this.
More humor, please. This is also our second session, so I'd had a chance to kind of digest and think about, like, this game. And so I went in, like, a little bit more, like, pumped up.
Yeah. And you get just the really awesome shot of, like, Raiden standing on the one plane, the other's flying at him, and he just cuts the whole thing in two right down the middle.
That slow-mo cinematic Raiden being cool.
It's the most Avengers of all the scenes in the game.
That is exactly what it is.
Like, everything about it just screams Avengers.
The fact that, like, Raiden falls all that way, and then it's just like, oh yeah, he's fine. Like, he's just got to go on foot now.
Yeah, what's it? Boris, like, calls you, and he's like, up you go, sports. Time to get you out of Denver. It's like, okay. There's this whole, like, Doctor isn't sure if he's dead, and he, like, salutes him, and he's, like, about to cry, and then Raiden's just like, okay, where were we?
It's like, I'm fine.
Oh, man. It's just such a weirdly cool cutscene that comes out of nowhere.
There's also, because that was, like, the shortest level, because you didn't do all of the extra little things. You're like, nah, dude, let's get going, and, like, you steal the motorcycle. And there's the bit where he's like, hey, like, he carves to the ground, I'm borrowing this, here's my number to, like, call me back.
Oh, and the funniest thing about that, that you learn through the DLC stuff, that was Sam's bike.
That's so funny.
So technically, Raiden brings back Sam's bike to him.
Like, can you imagine he rolls up and Sam's like, oh, you found my bike.
That would have been good. They should have done that. I mean, they were going for something very serious with that scene, but, like,
no, they
that
very
would have
much
been
were.
good. So that's the whole thing. The escape from Denver, no boss fight. I don't like that level, because boss fights are my favorite thing about the game.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, there's nothing interesting here. I can fight more of the monkey enemies if I want to. I don't.
If you want to. But it's okay, because then we get to one of the best flippin' fights in this game.
Badlands Showdown. So the way that they sort of broke this one chapter into two chapters, so you get a whole level with no boss fight for one chapter, and then you get only the boss fight for the next chapter to really give it the importance that it deserves.
Yeah.
So
there was that part of me. There was that part of me that, like, when he rode up on the motorcycle, I thought the fight was gonna happen while you were riding the motorcycle, and then
that would have been neat.
And I was like, this is gonna be epic, and then he gets off, and then I was just like, oh, okay.
That was also the part he's, like, on the motorcycle, and they're playing this super, like, grungy metal music. I was just like, this is the most Shadow the Hedgehog thing I've seen not in Shadow the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
But it was really funny, and it's so funny too, because you can't, like, Raiden pulls up and you see Sam petting Bladewolf, and I kid you not, everyone that I've seen that sees that, they're like, is Bladewolf gonna betray us? Like, is he gonna join the enemy side? Every time.
Did I do that?
You did too. Like, at least for a minute, like I saw, like, when you saw that, I remember you saying, like, oh no, Bladewolf. So I don't know, maybe that's what you're thinking, but,
I think,
like,
you're right.
At least for a moment, and then he, like, walks up to Raiden, and he's just like, hey, I have no clue what this guy's about to do. Like, I've known this guy for a few years, and I have no clue what he's about to do. Like, I'm scared.
Yeah.
But then it's like, so here's the thing. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat this. This was easily my favorite chapter in the game because it's a samurai showdown, and
it's so good.
I am all in on that. You can justify anything. You can put any morally unclean, extremely disturbing anything you want in your story. But if you include a samurai showdown, I am there. Like, And they did this one so well.
Oh,
The
dude.
music is hype. There's the freaking, if you just stand there, like there's the tumbleweed that blows by.
That tumbleweed was just the icing on the cake.
It is
I was like,
such
this is
a nice
so
effect.
good.
Like
Especially
Mhm.
I was just gonna say, especially because like people, I've seen this comparison made a lot that like Western movies and samurai movies are the exact same movies. It's just swords or guns.
Yeah, pretty much. That's also why I like Westerns.
The tumbleweed was like, man, this is too perfect.
It really is. Like, most people just, like, as soon as the fight starts, like, they just get moving or whatever. But, like, you're rewarded. If you just stand there and stare for a minute, you get that. And it's like, that is so cool. And, yeah, just the way that this fight works with Sam, how he's got, like, his whole thing, how, like, his katana has, like, the gun trigger on it, so he can shoot the blade out and do these, like, lightning-fast strikes.
Yeah.
It just leads to so many cool, like, attacks and everything. You just get the most, like, gloriously, like, futuristic yet appropriate, like, samurai battle.
Mm-hmm. Not to mention, there's the bit where you knock the blade out of his hand, and that's when the instrumental kicks in.
Yeah, instead of doing it like it starts with the instrumental, and then on the final phase, the vocal theme. With this one, it's like, it starts with the vocals, and then whenever he's not holding the sword, it plays the instrumental, which is just like, oh, that's neat.
Not to mention, like, his reaction to that moment of you knocking the blade out of his hand, and he looks genuinely surprised, and he just, all right, like, show me a good time. Like,
and then he's arguably harder when he doesn't have the sword, because he's so, like, defensive at that point. Like, he blocks and he does all these, like, kicks and everything. It's just like, holy smokes.
You know what it reminded me of is in Punch-Out, when you fight on Punch-Out for the Wii.
Yeah.
When you fight Don Flamenco.
Yeah.
and there's that thing you can do where you can knock his toupee off.
Mm-hmm.
And then his attack pattern becomes more aggressive.
Yeah.
And it's just like, can we go back to, like, when
just
we
didn't
do that?
It's so good.
like it reminded me of that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. The music here just kicks butt, plain and simple.
Dude, it's so good.
The only thing I know for real.
I almost had us do a different joke for the beginning of this podcast because it was based on the lyrics of like there will be blood shed. The man in the podcast nods his head. Like, that was the joke I came up with, but then you came up with that whole masterpiece at the beginning, and I was like, nah, we're doing that.
Well, the thing that's funny to me about the joke you came up with is, it's like, the man in the podcast nods his head. It's like, it's a podcast. You can't see him nodding his head.
I know. That's why it was so funny to me.
Oh, it's
but
good,
like,
though.
It's also, it comes up in the DLC, but like, it's like, oh, he had barely any cybernetic enhancements.
Yeah. It's so good.
But like, also the fact that he had like hardly any, and so he was just that powerful by being a human.
He was just a dude.
Yeah. A dude with a really great smile.
Uh-huh. A lot of people have said, like, if you gave him cybernetic enhancements or even, like, nanomachines, he would easily be the most powerful character in the Metal Gear canon. Like,
oh, dude, absolutely.
Like, no contest. Yeah, but like that fight is just real great. And the thing that I really like about it is that we gather the three, I guess you'd say, main characters, the three playable characters.
Yup.
Raiden, Sam, and Bladewolf, and the fact that, like, it's so interesting too how Bladewolf is the one that's like, I respect both of you, like, I don't want either of you to fight, and so he's like there, like, trying to talk him out of it, and Raiden's just like, don't interfere, and then they get all epic and the camera pans to their butts for a little bit.
Yeah, that's the thing about this game. You pointed it out to me and I noticed it a lot. It's just how much the camera loved the male posterior.
It's everywhere.
Like,
And it is so funny to me that it happens.
you know how I mentioned that like Mistral wasn't like overly sexualized in her fight?
Yeah.
Like,
Everyone else.
that's because it was everyone else. It was all the guys.
Oh, it's so good.
Platinum was exploring some things.
Oh yeah. Maybe this will spoil something we'll get into a little bit later, but I'll go into more depth on the cutscene post fighting Sam when we're talking about favorite moments, because that's probably it for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so after you beat Sam and everything, then you head to the where is it? You head back to the base because Sunny has made a extremely fast method of transportation for
More
you.
importantly, though,
And more
we meet
importantly,
the greatest character in the entire Metal Gear canon, the freaking Weeb Guard.
get that man some nanomachines.
Dude, I love that guy so much.
Oh man, like
Again, that was another instance of like the humor was so good, especially after like the dramatic moment of like the Sam fight, and then we follow it up with this guy.
It's just this like this. I don't even know what to make of him. This like weeb security guard guy who's just like snacking on pizza,
reading manga.
And he's like, and it's specifically he's looking at anime girls and lusting after them.
It was just like oh, so kawaii.
So
like, like I was so dead at that point because it was so out of left field.
All the props to the localization guys for for that right there, because that's the thing. Technically, like you just see that in Japanese and you're like, oh, otaku guy, haha, that's funny. The fact that it's in English,
yeah,
and it's like it takes place in America.
Yep,
and he's like so kawaii. It's just
there's an extra layer of absurdity.
Kawaii. And then there's like freaking Bladewolf there at the window, and he's like, "Are you Mr. Raiden?" Oh, that guy kills me.
That guy was such a highlight for me because I was just like, all right, I'm so glad we kept playing this just so I got to meet this character.
And then there's like the thing at the end, like the ship blasts off and Raiden's headed to his next destination, and he's just kind of sitting there like, okay, back to business. And then he looks back in the book and he's like, whoa! Oh, that guy kills me.
I love that guy.
It's so funny.
No, but legitimately, I did want to say that, like, I really enjoyed Sunny as a character.
Yeah,
like,
she was a lot of fun.
She was the one, because you had to pause and be like, all right, this is a character from past Metal Gear. This is how she knows Raiden. And I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I think you said this, I think you put it best. You're like, Sunny really brings out the best parts of Raiden.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as a character. And we looked at some of, like, those codex with her. And, like, a lot of my frustration with, like, what they've been doing with Raiden's character, once Sunny was introduced and they were, like, talking and interacting, like, she definitely brought out the Raiden that I actually cared about before Jack the Ripper happened.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that. Like, I really liked Sunny a lot.
Yeah, Sunny showing up and like all this stuff about her and like kind of getting to see a better side of Raiden was the reason I didn't completely like give up on the game and be like, oh, this is just like glorified stupid violence. Like that showed better aspects of the game. I would say on the one hand, it's kind of like too little too late.
Yeah, it definitely was that way for me, but I appreciated Sunny as a character and like
at least like they made the effort to do that. And again, I don't like the system of the codec calls, how you have to pause and go listen to them, for the reason that it completely breaks the perfect flow that gameplay wise Metal Gear Rising has. And that's like all of the conversations with Sunny are completely optional, and you have to go digging through and look for them. And so
It's
it was kind of
frustrating.
like one of their best characters who really plays off the main character super well gets extremely little screen time. And so it's just like
She gets almost nothing, and I feel that it's almost a crime that.
and it kind of seemed like that's where they were trying to go with the stories. Like Raiden has his moment where he just lets loose and admits that he likes killing and becomes like a little bit deranged from it. And then Sunny like kind of brings him back. But they really just didn't put in enough scenes of that to kind of.
No, well, and especially because of the way the story was going. Because like Sunny even says like, "Oh, I guess we don't really have time to catch up," you know, and like so it's just like, "All right, get on the rocket, Raiden." I'm just like,
There's also this
like,
weird like with the scene like where she first shows up, Raiden starts like glowing red.
oh,
Like
so what it was?
his edginess is coming out.
What it was? Because I went back and I watched it because I had to
Yeah.
look up names of characters because we
Yeah,
nicknamed everyone.
Yeah, that's fair.
But it's where she meets Bladewolf and like she like shake and like
Oh,
Bladewolf is just
yeah.
a dog and so like he shakes her hand because Bladewolf's a good boy and then Raiden tries to do the same and like Bladewolf's like you're an idiot like he just like looks at him.
Okay,
then
so
Raiden,
that's
like-
him getting angry at.
Yeah,
Wolf.
yeah.
Okay, now I get that. That's kind of funny, actually.
No, yeah, like again, it's more of that really good humor to break up the
Okay.
very tense situations.
I didn't
And I really
catch that.
enjoyed
I thought that was
I
like
didn't
his
catch it the
evil
first
trying
time.
to spill out while he was talking to Sunny. I was like, what the heck?
No, like it was, and again, I didn't catch that the first time, because I was too busy going that weeb guard.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
But yeah,
So I
so we
guess
get on the rocket and we go to our spoiler warning.
Yep. So this is the final spoiler warning that we'll be giving. Specifically for this, I will put in like a timestamp thing and say like skip to this point because, like I said, you can't even fathom how insane. Like we've talked about some pretty insane stuff, like suplexing an entire giant like robot or whatever. Like we've talked about the freaking like standing on an airplane and cutting through another one. We've talked about all of this crazy stuff. We talked about Sam. He doesn't have any cyborg enhancements and he can do all this crazy stuff. Like there's a lot of crazy stuff in this game, but nothing even holds a candle to this final fight. It is genuinely the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in a video game. I keep saying that because it's so true. And so I'm like, really, like, if you want to see this, heck, if you don't plan on playing the game, but you're like interested enough to know about this, just like look up the cutscenes of the final boss.
Yeah,
on like YouTube.
Oh my god.
And just let it take you for a ride for how absurd it is.
A Raiden.
A Raiden.
All right, podcast is canceled. Let's go home.
All right.
Skip here to avoid spoilers.
So with that said, spoiler warning's already up, and let's talk about the final chapter, Assassination Attempt.
Good old Senator Armstrong.
Senator Armstrong. The fact that it opens like you're just wandering around, you're sneaking past dudes, and there's like Bladewolf knocked out on the ground, and you're just like, but he's strong? Like, what got him? And then like the whole floor breaks apart, and Metal Gear Excelsius rises from the depths. And it's like you just see this big freaking spider robot weapon of mass destruction, and you're like, whoa, this is insane. Is this our final boss? And then Armstrong comes out of it. And he gives the hammiest monologue.
It's even that bit like he's got the cigar and he flicks it at Raiden and he like cuts it in half.
Yeah, it's like Raiden like has to get the last laugh, but he doesn't really have a last laugh.
Oh my
I thought it was really interesting, the plot point, how they're like, oh, we thought they were gonna unleash like a crazy nuke or something, but they just like got footage of Raiden assaulting the base, and we're like, look what Pakistan is doing to this U.S. military base. And people buy into it because Americans are stupid.
Because of the internet. Nobody fact checks anything.
Yeah. So I don't know if you were able to like look back at the scene, because you definitely won't catch it while this is going on. But Armstrong has this whole thing where he's like, have you checked the internet lately? And at first they show like the news, like covering all this stuff and being like, oh, look at what Pakistan is doing. And then they show like something like Twitter, where people are like posting their comments. They're like, hey, Uncle Sam, Pakistan needs to boot up their bum. And then like the one that like the camera zooms in on where it's like, Pakistan is part of the axis of evil, and it's just so like, this is just what Twitter is, like, overreacting and going to all these strange, harsh conclusions about other countries. Like,
it is exactly it.
Oh man!
Not to mention, it was very interesting seeing Armstrong, who, like, we've had all these like super like muscly, cybernetically enhanced people. He's just like a guy.
Yeah, he's just a dude with like a suit and tie.
But then like he has this giant mech. And then he like runs in. I don't know what it is about Senator Armstrong, but the motion capture on him is so exaggerated.
It's so funny. He flails his arms while he's talking, and
extra in everything he does, and it makes everything in that sequence so funny.
It really does.
And it's not even the craziest part.
It's not.
No.
Before we get to the craziest part,
talk about Excelsior, like,
Metal Gear Excelsior. So this boss fight is really interesting because it is the largest enemy you fight. Like, even Metal Gear Ray does not come close to the scale that this thing has. And so the way that they do it, like you kind of have to do with most really big video game bosses, is that you kind of have to take it in chunks. Where it starts you with, like, literally. Like, you start by fighting, like, the blades it's got on, like, the arms, and then you start attacking the feet, and then you climb up one of the feet, cut it off, hop to the other side, cut off another foot. And so it's, like, it's really cool. It's really cinematic. But the fact that, like, the fight is just, like, you repeat that twice gets maybe a little repetitive, so that's why it's kind of not my favorite fight.
Yeah.
But the whole time that you're doing all that, you've got Armstrong shouting all these, like, don't mess with the USA! Uncle Sam needs you to die, Jack! Like, America crap. And there's, what's the one? There's, like, the Darth Vader line where he's like, impressive, Jack! Most impressive! It's
like, you're saying it and I'm reliving it and just being like, right. I'm having that. Never mind the fact, like, you take one of its arms and like, or like its sword, and then you hack it up with that, and then once again I'm just like, oh yeah, mass is just a number. I forgot.
That's the point where it really, like, stands to reason, like the absurd power scaling. Basically, Raiden picks up that entire thing, launches it, and tears off one of its arms with the blades, and then you swing that to block it from the other blades, and then you just hack it into pieces using the massive, like, blade that it's got. And it's kind of like, it's not nearly as fast as, like, a blade mode thing with your own sword, but it's just the fact that you get something that huge and you just, like...
Yeah. It's so extra.
It's extremely
extra. And it's not even the craziest part.
And it's not even the craziest part, so we gotta talk about that now.
like, that could have been the ending, and I've been like, yeah, okay, that was an ending. No. We gotta go even further. We gotta Super Saiyan 3 this.
Yep. Would you like to run us through your initial thoughts experiencing Senator Armstrong?
Senator Armstrong comes out, and then just, like, Super Saiyan powers up. Like, literally, like, energy flows into him from all the machine. And I'm like, what is happening? Suddenly, this, like, squat, like, fat politician is completely jacked, and I'm just like, what is happening? And he proceeds to beat the tar out of Raiden.
Oh, it's
And
so good.
And I'm sitting here, and like their explanation at that point was just like, he's like, I played ball in my college days.
Played college
And,
ball, you know.
and like, and that whole exchange between him and Raiden was like, yeah, for some cushy Ivy League or whatever. And he's like, try University of Texas. Could have gone pro if I didn't join the military. Like,
So
I
one of the other things, I guess, as we're getting into this, I'll let you keep going in a second. But one of the things I want to point out, so watching this part of the Oni Plays playthrough, again, like I said, because it's kind of just like a let's play with like guys on a couch, like they get distracted and they start telling stories and stuff. While this was going on, they were all like on the edge of their seats, like jaws dropped, amazed by this. And one of them like brings up like a conversation topic, and Chris immediately is just like, "Hold on a sec, I want to see how this plays out." Like deliberately stopping tangents so they can just focus on the madness that's happening in game.
and the thing is, he starts monologuing. I couldn't follow. I went back and rewatched it. And I still
it's
couldn't
the only
follow
way.
the monologue.
You have to watch that cutscene so many times to get the point of it.
No, because it was so absurd.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I couldn't follow. Because again, he's talking about how he played ball in college, and then he kicks Raiden, and you hear the crowd cheer. I thought I hallucinated that. Like, I thought that was a noise from upstairs, and it just coincidentally happened at that time. I was like, there's no way they just did that.
But they
And, like,
did.
And like I said, you think the motion capture was goofy for him before. Oh my goodness.
He does like the sumo stomp thing.
He's so over the top.
Oh man.
I have no words to describe this moment. Just, he was so ridiculous.
Yep.
Oh, and not to mention, then you get you see his nano machines is what it's explained as later, because science. And this is the other One Piece thing where I was like, is that armament hockey?
Yeah, it's literally just armament hockey from One Piece, where like parts of your body turn black and become like harder than steel or whatever. Like,
yeah, like your willpower manifests into armor, and I was just like, I'm sorry, are we in One Piece? I thought we were in Sonic. Now we're in One Piece?
This final battle is like so ripped straight out of One Piece. It's hilarious. I guess before we move too far past it with like the played college ball, you know. The other thing about that part with Oni Plays, like Raiden's all like, it's some cushy Ivy League school. Lyle specifically says right there, like, no guy who is proud of playing college ball would, like, hesitate to drop the name of the school where he played. And then seconds later, try University of Texas. And he's just like, I called it!
It was so, just...
It's perfect.
He's such a ridiculous character. Like, just... everything about him. Not to mention, like we don't see him for we see him once, briefly,
with like the camera behind his back the whole time, and then they drop a thing about like, oh, that's like the senator of Denver, like,
yeah,
that's a U.S. senator, and that's how the bad guys are getting their like funding and stuff. It's through this guy, and so you're like, okay, so he's just like a plot excuse for.
No, yeah. And then, like, the whole time he's monologuing and talking. Oh, and then there's the bit where, like, okay, because this is the thing. Raiden gets the crap kicked out of him a lot in this game.
Horribly.
But, like, this bit, Raiden just takes so much abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And then Raiden's like, maybe I was wrong. And he's like, am I finally getting through to you? And he, like, helps him up, dusts him off, like, gives him a hug. Like... like it, and then just that bit where Ryan's like, "You're completely insane," and like the look of sheer surprise as he says that, like I'm like, you can't tell me that Armstrong genuinely believed that he'd convinced Raiden to believe in what he was saying.
Yep. And the other thing that's great about like Armstrong's big speech right there, they take a lot of stuff from like famous presidential speech quotes, at least in the English translation of it.
Yeah.
And they weave a lot of that into the dialogue. And he literally says, this is a game that takes place in the year 2017, and this was released in 2013. He literally says, "We'll make America great again."
I can't. Like, as soon as he said that, I lost it. I was like, I'm done. I can't even now.
It is so funny. Like,
that aged like a fine wine.
And it was the fact, like, the whole thing about, like, his plan. He's planning to become president in 2020. It's... Oh my gosh. You have this, like... this loose cannon Republican, like, man with these insane ideals.
Well, he doesn't write his own speeches.
He doesn't write... Yeah.
The banter in this was so good. Like, it was dumb, but it was so good.
And I would say, like, a lot of people on the internet were definitely making some parallels to Trump, which was extremely hilarious. Like,
my goodness.
I hadn't played this game until after the big, like, 2020 elections. But, like, I imagine, like, the people who had played this game were just memeing all about that, like, but then, like, the other thing that's about that, because, like, again, people make a lot of parallels to Trump with this character, but, I would say this would not be so much a case of, like, Trump, more as, like, and, okay, I know we compare Sundowner to this guy, but, like, imagine if Alex Jones was running for president.
Dude...
That level of insanity would be what it would be like to have Armstrong running for president.
Legitimately, like, it's so... He's so over... Like, I don't know how to... I don't have the words for it. He's just so over the top and extra. And the way he just knocks Raiden down. And there's so many... There are so many gameplay segments where it's like, alright, time to fight him. And you deal, like, pitiful amounts of damage. And he just... cleans your clock, and then it goes back to him monologuing again and being just this absolute goofball.
Yeah. And, like, for as little as I know about Metal Gear, like, the Metal Gear series, I know that one of, like, the common things that they do is, whether it's, like, the final boss or, like, leading up to it, they usually have, like, a fist fight scene towards the end of the game. So the fact that Armstrong breaks your sword... and then you gotta fist fight him, like, it was a nice little detail. I definitely appreciated that. But then we get to the real finale. Like,
my goodness,
we're not even at the most insane part yet.
Yup.
So we get to the point after Armstrong has completely wiped the floor with Raiden. He's got nothing left in him. And he's, like, ready to just, like, deliver the finishing blow. That's when Bladewolf shows up, and he's got Sam's katana. And the whole thing about it was that it was, you know, locked in the sheath or whatever, so, like, Raiden couldn't use it if he wanted to. But then Wolf, like, plays back the message from Sam about how, like, okay, if Raiden beats me, then, like... the lock on my blade's gonna disable, and then what you want to do with the sword after that is up to you. And also, can I just say, like, during that scene, there is a fantastic rendition of Bladewolf's theme. Like, it's got, like, the part, like, kind of after the instrumental with, like, the whoa, 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 and it's just so, like, oh, it gives me chills. It's so,
that legit gave me chills, and I was like, okay,
so good.
This is gonna be the, like, that was the moment where I was like, this is gonna be the finale.
Like, that is, like, prelude to final boss music. Definitely.
That was so good.
And then, like, we get even more so, like, the most One Piece thing that happens. This even like during the Oni plays thing, like Tomar points out, like that was a One Piece scene that just happened there. Like Armstrong comes in, he kicks Bladewolf out.
He kicks your dog.
He just and you hear him like howl in pain. It's like no. And then Raiden catches the sword, and he does that like the most Luffy thing that a protagonist could do. Just Armstrong. It is straight out of One Piece, that whole, like, encounter.
It's so good.
Like, it's just the whole setup of, like, that you hurt my friend, like, now I mean business, like, I'm gonna stop you for good. And then his whole, like, I said my sword was a tool of justice, not to be used in vengeance. But now I'm not so sure, and besides... this isn't my sword.
I was waiting for him to say that. Like, he's like, this isn't even my sword. And I'm just like, dude, go get him.
Oh, man. And then you get... I'm still saying it. One of the most ridiculous final bosses. You're, like, standing there in this broken, like in the broken remains of Metal Gear Excelsius. Everything's, like, on fire.
There's all of the, like, explosions happening around you.
Like, Armstrong is, like, hitting the ground so hard, just pounding his fist into the earth and causing, like, eruptions out of them.
Yeah, and just... oh my goodness.
And, like, all throughout, you get that song.
Yeah.
It has to be this way. That song
is so good.
It's beautiful. It is just a thing of beauty, that entire fight. And like this somebody pointed this out to me. I wish I could remember like the username of the person that said this, but like this is like one of my favorite things. So with all of the boss fights leading up to this point, the vocals kick in when you're at what you know to be the best part of the fight. The vocals start at the beginning of this fight, letting you know, oh, we're already at the best part. Like,
this is the best part of the fight, is this whole fight.
I will say, like, drawing some parallels here, I was thinking, like, while thinking about this final boss, I was also thinking about the final boss to Transformers Devastation.
Yep.
To nobody's surprise, but minor spoilers, it's Megatron.
Gasp! Who would have seen it coming?
I mean, I guess there are other Transformers bad guys they could have used, but it's just like it's G1 Transformers. It's going to be Megatron, but
exactly.
And it's I kind of go back and forth on which final boss is cooler between the two, because like the one thing that the Transformers one really gets props for is that the backdrop of the fight is that they're in space, which is like one of the coolest settings. And that's the thing.
Not to mention it does the thing from the movie.
Yeah. Like it recreates like the fight scene from the movie and everything, and it's just like that one is also really cool. The music, it goes for like the symphonic metal thing, which hilariously enough this game does too. Its final boss theme does symphonic metal.
Yep.
So, like, I notice a lot of parallels between them. But I think the main thing that really puts the Armstrong fight over the top for me, one, it's how absurd the fight is. That you're fighting this buff U.S. senator in the middle of this, like, volcanic battlefields, like, fighting to the death. As well as, like, the music. It has to be this way really is just, like... they go all out for that song. The way, like, the strings and the vocals harmonize during the chorus. Like, everyone jokes about, like, the violence breeds violence line. But, like, the harmony in that is so freaking beautiful.
It gives me chills every time. And there's a reason that line is talked about.
And it's like, you have this beautiful song playing in the backdrop of this fight with, like... the voice actors really giving it their all on these, like, grunts and screams and battle noises. And, like, all these great quotes from Armstrong where he's like, "This is the greatest fight of my life!" And just all these insane moments. Like, the QTEs on that fight are insane. Like, Like, Armstrong knocks the blade out of your hand, goes to do, like, a stomp thing, and then Raiden goes under and, like, kicks him from underneath. Like, oh, man.
Yeah,
It is, like, one of the biggest highs that a video game has ever given me.
it was one of the wildest things I'd ever seen. And I was just like,
Mm-hmm.
what is happening?
And I'm just like, for all of those huge downsides that I have with the game, I still really hate the direction the story took, especially with that monsoon fight. And like, I really hate the way they explain a lot of things and glorify killing and whatever. But when you just take this single final battle, and just how artfully it's made, like, this fight alone justifies this game's existence for sure.
Yeah.
It is really just one of the best final bosses I have ever had the pleasure of seeing in a video game. Oh man. And I did it on normal.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a thing too.
Yeah,
I was like, I remember when you did that, and I was like, wait, that was the normal difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
Holy crap. Like, your health recovery items, you were mowing through those in that fight, and you were like, I might be dying. We might be doing this again.
And it's like, they pull out all the stops. Like, he's got multiple health bars. He's got, like, a regenerating thing that heals him.
Yep.
And he's got, like, these insane, like, QTEs that require quick reaction speeds. It's nuts.
There's the thing where he throws debris at you and you have to line up where to cut it perfectly.
Yep. And that's the main thing. Like, you gotta get those because, like, they have the nano paste inside that heals you. Like, and he's sitting there tearing through your heal. So it's like, if you don't cut through those, you don't get healed.
Yep.
And then just, like, that insane, like, finale to the whole thing, how, like, he comes at you with the punches, and you've got to go into blade mode and use that to knock his hands away. Like, to knock his punches away so he doesn't hit you. And then you get that final moment where, like, you slash through him, you stab the sword right through him, and he's still going, and you gotta use your fists for the rest. Like... And you just get that insane, like, moment of just, like, Raiden just, like, unloading all the punches. And then finally, like, you get your sword, like, you pull your sword back out of him. And you, like, hack away at his heart, exposing it. And then it's really graphic.
Yeah.
But it is just so hype.
Raiden, it's also almost
Raiden,
comedic.
Yeah. Raiden reaches in and pulls out his heart. And smashes it with his bare hands. It's nuts, dude.
That was the most just like I needed a break after that. Like,
that
I was like, what the heck?
I almost get sick from getting chills that much during that fight. And then, like, I feel like I've just hyperventilated by the end, and I'm just like
yeah,
struggling to breathe after all that. And it's like, you gotta move fast, and so I'm like, I cannot do that fight without, like, getting completely sweaty and gross, because it's just so intense.
And then we're treated to the ending, and it's just kind of like,
and then it's got a really mediocre ending. Like, honestly,
again, it was Sunny, like, you know, it's like, well, to, like, people still see him as Jack the Ripper, but to me, like, he'll always be a hero. And, like, that's a really nice note to end on, except that, like, the Jack the Ripper thing was never resolved.
Yeah, it's not deserved.
Yeah.
It didn't really deserve that kind of an ending to lionize Raiden as this great hero who saved the world. It's like, nah, he was pretty scummy throughout a lot of that game.
Like, Raiden was almost as much at fault. Like, he did a great thing, but, like, definitely for the wrong reasons.
And I will say that is at least something interesting they do with Armstrong, where, like, the whole point of him during that final fight, and like what the lyrics explain in It Has to Be This Way, is about like the two of them coming to this realization that like Raiden and Armstrong aren't actually that different.
Mm-hmm.
It's just interesting because we don't get enough time to see where that goes.
Yeah, well, especially it's crazy because Armstrong is introduced so late into the game, and so they throw so much at you with this character
Mm-hmm.
in like such a short amount of time.
It's just like, first you're like, oh, there's like the senator guy, he's piloting a giant mech. And then it's like, oh, he's beating the crap out of me. Wait, he's talking about like turning America into a place where murder is legal, and that's gonna put an end to war. What is he? And then he like rips off his shirt, and he's got One Piece armament hockey.
And tumors, apparently, like
and tumors. And it's just so like it's impossible to follow any of this. And even when you go back and analyze it a ton, there's still just not enough.
Yeah.
Of like an explanation for what all goes down there.
I will say, when I went back to rewatch it to try and make sense of things, one thing I did catch in the ending was like, because they had to wrap up like, all right, so there's all these brains of children, and like,
yeah,
let's get the, and like what happens with them. And one thing I didn't catch, because I was so just like in awe of what I'd just seen. Like Doctor mentions that he's like, hey, like at least now my research will have a peaceful solution. And one of them was like, what? Like, that's kind of weird for you. And he's like, well, recent events have given me a chance to think about things. And I was like, that's really cool, actually, that like this very morbid character, like actually,
he learns and kind of grows from the experience as well. Which is
and cool. So I was like, man, at least that happened, but like I missed it entirely our first playthrough.
He goes from the beginning of the game, I have chunks of human flesh all over my house, yeah. He goes from that to like, like, no, we're gonna find a good way to like take care of all these kids, give them cybernetic bodies, and like help them. One of the things they point out, because of like the whole encounter with what's his name, George, the kid that you meet in the sewers, because of the unfortunate parts of the plot and like what kind of happens to his body, you see that like he had to get some cybernetic enhancements as well. It is kind of interesting that they point out he says like he's like, this is awesome, like my body doesn't feel pain anymore, like I'm way more flexible than I used to be, like you see that he's enjoying having a cyborg body. And how there's like, yes, we can just be like mass producing like murderers and soldiers, but like there would be good applications for like cybernetics if like
just for normal people
wanted to like apply that stuff to everyday life. So that was at least like a nice little thing.
There were some nice things in the ending. It just it felt very hollow because of what they did with Raiden.
It just really didn't feel like it was enough.
But that wasn't the end of our adventure. That was just the end of that session.
So then we go into a little backstory on the DLC side where we play as Jetstream Sam.
So I don't even have much to say about the DLC. The thing was, for me, the night before we were going to record, I did not sleep great. My son woke me up a bunch. And so I didn't get a whole lot of sleep. And then I went to work, and I worked all day, and it was like an exhausting day. Like,
just everything was happening to you.
And then we came back, and we started playing the DLC. And so, because of that exhaustion, I was incredibly loopy. Like, the whole time, I was like, just so out of it. And so like we started just like monologuing in Spanish to each other, like about like as Sam, and it made it one of the funniest things I think we've ever done.
Like I can't even remember all the jokes, but there's the thing like we were looking around for like an ID to open a door, and we're like, "Where's the bathroom?" Like,
yeah,
women's. Like, no, I'm a man. I can't go to the women's room.
Or like there was the monkey, and we're like, the monkey can't get the banana. Like,
what was the one I said? El mono de la muerte, which is the death monkey.
The death monkey. That was so funny. Like, I was so loopy. I think it was because you sent me that meme of the Brazilians can double jump. Because he has no cybernetic enhancements.
So it's literally just like, oh, he can just defy the laws of physics because he's
not
cool.
Not to mention the final boss, and you're like, oh no, Brazilians can double jump, but Americans can fly. Like, dude, it is very rare that I hit that stage of loopiness, and it was one of the funniest nights. Like, I barely remember anything about the DLC.
Right.
I think there was a bit where like there was explosions everywhere, and Sam was just applauding and like
it
laughing.
Was Armstrong was doing his same thing where he was using the nanomachines to like absorb all the energy. And Sam's just sitting there staring like, whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah, like legitimately, that reaction, that's how I felt that whole playthrough. Like, of that DLC. I was so loopy.
He just had the most, like, famous person in sitcom walks in the room energy. Like,
dude. Well, the fact that you had the taunt button as Sam.
Oh, man. That, and then just the crazy way of, like, how they end it, and they explain it, like, Sam slices off Armstrong's arm, but then because he has, like, the what are they, nano machines? I just want to call it armament hockey.
What it is.
It's literally that. If you've ever seen One Piece, you know what we're talking about. It's the power that Armstrong has is literally the power from the show One Piece. Like, but yeah, so like he cuts off his arm and then it leaves like a point, and then because he can harden it, he turns it into this like, you know, giant like stabby utensil. And then, like, stabs through Sam, and it's like, oh, that's how Sam got beaten and roped into all of Armstrong's stuff. But honestly, like, the most fun I had with that was definitely being there with you while you were loopy the whole time.
Yeah. It was all of that Spanish, like, from not remembering it, because it's been like, I think I was talking to a coworker. I calculated it. I think at the time it's been like 7 years since I've gotten back, and like I haven't spoken it really much since. And so like bringing it all back in this very tired, exhausted state. Oh, and then the funny thing was then we went right into the Bladewolf DLC.
Yeah,
I don't know if you had more to say about Sam's
no,
campaign.
Not really. I will just say between the two DLCs, I don't quite like that one as much because it's pretty much only like reused content and nothing else. But the fact that we were talking in Spanish and joking around and having a good time made that one a lot of fun.
Yeah. But so like a little bit of that loopiness carried over into the Bladewolf DLC, but the loopiness did like drop right there at the end, and then I was just tired.
Whoa, your mic peaked there for a second.
Oh, sorry.
That was scary. I will have to edit that out.
Okay.
There's a really scary loud noise I just heard. Anyway,
I'm sorry. But yeah, no, like towards the end of that, I was so tired.
Yeah, definitely.
And like, it was a shame too, because like, I think because of that, I didn't enjoy Bladewolf quite as much. Because like, one, I was more tired. And it was like, we were like, oh man, like I want to keep these jokes that we were doing with Sam going. And so then, like, we kind of did it because then we started like doing like the run protocol, like stab enemy or something like that.
Run protocol, pee on fire hydrant. Like,
Yeah, like we were just like doing like robot things, but like as a dog, which is exactly what that was. But like I was tired, and then I would like they brought Mistral back, and I was like, oh frick yeah, like she was my favorite. And then just with the camera angles and like the little like grabby hand enemies like being her chair, like they just really sexualized her, and I was just like, man,
I know they almost got points for not doing that in a Kojima
I know,
game.
and then they dropped it right at the end, and I was just upset.
Well, it was not even right at the end. It was in this DLC pack on the
like
side.
that whole,
like,
yeah,
they're like, "Whoops, we forgot to do this in the base game. Better do it here." And it's just like, guys, come on.
It's like, dude, come on.
Yeah, and
she
then
was fine.
And that was the thing. They also introduced us to Kamsin as a character, and he has no butt, so they couldn't even do that. Come on.
Nope. I forgot his name. Like I was just like, oh, he's that guy. I was so tired.
The whole embodiment of his character is that he is the most stock military soldier, America, freedom. Like
every Call of Duty, like
that's the thing. The vibe I get from this guy is like somebody who plays every yearly release of Call of Duty. Like that is the vibe I get from this guy.
I will say one of the best parts of the DLC though was Bladewolf's escape.
Yes.
Like legitimately, that was one of the coolest moments. Like because he's having this whole like inner conflict of, like, what's freedom? I don't know. I've never tasted it. Like, and then the moment that Mistral even gives him like a little bit of freedom, he books it.
It's so great because she's got like, and you don't know it's a trap at the time, but she's got like her little phone thing, and she's like, I disabled your lock. And then immediately, before she even turns her head, he cuts off her hand, takes the phone, and runs. And he's like, thank you.
Yeah. It's like, oh, it was so good.
That one was so good. And it, like, that one scene expresses so much of the personality that Bladewolf has.
It's why Bladewolf is so cool.
Yep. And so we do actually get a new song from this one for the fight against Kamsin. Specifically, Kamsin's character is that we have this guy who's only going to be on screen for 2 seconds, so we need to make you hate him as much as possible, so that way you feel like killing him is justified.
Yeah.
And so he's just this jerkwad potty mouth soldier who's all about like America and freedom. And he keeps rubbing that in Bladewolf's face while, like, freedom is, like, Bladewolf's whole complex is, like...
Literally, like, Bladewolf is just chained up and suspended, like, during all of their interactions.
And so it's just, like, by the end, you see this guy, and he's got his whole, like, big mech suit thing, which is... His body is attached to his mech suit, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And he's just like, but America and freedom. And Bladewolf is just like, I am so done with your crap. Like, this ends here. Like, you are the last thing between me and freedom. I am out of here. Yeah, and the song we get, A Hot Wind Blows. Before I'd played the DLC, I heard this one, because I was just like, oh yeah, the soundtrack. And I was like, who is this guy? Did I miss one? But honestly, like... Having heard it in context and seen, like, the boss fight and everything, I actually really do like this song. I think it's really cool that they made a unique, like, new boss fight. It's one of, like, the not only hardest, but interesting fights.
It was actually one of my favorite things about the Bladewolf DLC, because, like you said with Sam's, it's just reused content. And so it just, like, nothing about it feels unique. Whereas, like, with this one, like, oh no, yeah, like, this feels really cool.
And it's, like, the fact that, like, they incorporate the stealth segments where, like, he smashes his, like, hammer thing into the ground and the smoke flies up, and there's like rocks everywhere that you can hide behind, and you can do a stealth attack for big damage on him. Like, mechanically, it's one of the most interesting boss fights. And it's honestly just super cool. Plus, I really just love, like, the way that Bladewolf plays.
Yeah. Well, it's neat, too, because he's, like, this cool quadruped character. The way his tail, like, pulls the chainsaw off of his back, like... he's just neat.
It's really cool. And so, like, that fight really does a good job of capturing, like, you're the last thing between me and what I want. So, like, you need to go down now. And especially the track has that kind of, like, that techno rock sort of sound that sounds like... What am I thinking? Almost like F-Zero music. In a way, like, because it specifically emphasizes a lot of the techno more than the others, and it has like rap in it and stuff, and so it's just like, oh, this is neat. This is like something really different. So yes, I very much enjoyed that. And then we get the final epilogue thing with like Sunny at the end.
Yeah, which again, Sunny's just good.
That one felt a little more deserved because, like, I don't know, Bladewolf has a bit more of like an actual like arc and learns things.
Yeah, well, especially because like
Raiden.
whereas Raiden has like all of his baggage from like previous games, Bladewolf was made for this game, and so like this is where we get to see all of his character, and it's really neat, like seeing that about him and how he's like. Bladewolf was very much a character that was molded by both Sam and Raiden.
And it's
so, yeah,
and I just love the shot at the end of like Sunny's like petting him and he wags his tail.
Oh,
it's so like he should just be like a murderous weapon of destruction or whatever, because that's what he's supposed to be. But it's just like he really does take the role of a dog, and he enjoys being a dog, and so it's just like, oh, that's really pleasant.
Runbark.exe.
Bork. Also, there was during like the base game ending, I guess we didn't talk. There was the slapstick kind of moment where like Sunny steps on his tail and he like hits his head into the desk and like the books fall on him.
Yeah,
that was just a cute little thing. Bladewolf is almost kind of more of a main character than Raiden. He gets the arc. He learns the valuable life lessons. He is good friends with the kids.
It's true. He's a good boy.
All right, so we've talked about all the content. We managed to turn this into another 4-hour podcast, I think.
Sheesh, dude. I didn't think I had that much. And part of it, too, is that I didn't think I had that much to say, but then you had plenty to say, too,
right.
And we'd bounce off each other.
I think our monsoon rant from both of us like really got us going and got us talking a lot. But anyways, that's pretty impressive. So, as we always do at the end of these podcasts, it's time for our favorite aspects of the game. So, with that, let me ask you, who was your favorite character?
Well, obviously it was the Weeb Guard. He doesn't even have a name, but like, dude, that guy is out there living best life.
I agree.
Okay, but like, legitimately, disregarding the Bladewolf DLC, I would say it's Mistral. I really like Mistral a lot. She was interesting, super interesting design. The fact that like she has the hands from these enemies and then like you fight her and the enemies is just like mechanically and character wise, I think she is just like interesting. But as I was thinking about it, like as we were recording this, I think it's Sunny. I think Sunny is actually my favorite character just because like she proceeded to just be this embodiment of good. And while yes, the ending is hollow, like with her statement of like Raiden being a hero, I can believe it a little bit because like she definitely brings the best out of Raiden. And definitely, when those two interact, Raiden definitely feels like that hero that she thinks he is. And
Yeah.
that, I very much appreciate that about Sunny.
Yeah, that's really cool. I will admit, it's very interesting that you just have this bright ray of sunshine character in this
Literally
otherwise
named
complete edge fest.
Yeah. Well, and she definitely stands to contrast like all of like the rest of the characters in this game.
Yeah, definitely.
What about yourself?
So I think it probably showed.
Yeah,
from a lot of
I
us.
ask knowing full well what the answer is.
It's Bladewolf, man. He experiences the most. It is so interesting the way they set him up. He is this AI that has access to all of this like information. And so he's like, I'm extremely smart. Like I'm the most like intelligent like AI beyond human reckoning. But the thing about that is like he's constantly one-upped by humans because they specifically do irrational crazy stuff based on emotion. And so he starts learning about a lot of that stuff and starts learning from the people around him. And he applies what he learns in all of these situations. He's always like trying to better himself. And honestly, like, because this game is such an edge fest and there's like all these questions about like morality and things, like there are moments where characters do things and you're like, yes, I'm right there with you. And then they do other stuff and you're like, I'm not there with you. I never once felt that way about Bladewolf. Like everything he says makes sense. It comes from like a very logical standpoint. And you just see like real growth with this character. And I almost kind of wish that I could play as him in the base campaign for that reason. Like, but, yeah, like a lot about Bladewolf just really like, I came to appreciate. He didn't catch me at first as like the coolest character. At first I was kind of leaning more towards Sam because I liked his cockiness and ridiculousness. But like the more I started to realize that like the story actually does real stuff and like takes a really solid direction with Bladewolf, I really started to admire that. Plus, weirdly enough, he's one of the characters that doesn't curse. So he gets PCM's not cursing badge of approval.
Good dog.
Even weirder, Monsoon is another character that doesn't curse.
Not Mistral. She gets the first F-bomb in the entire game. And then don't even get me started on Armstrong and the amount that he brings like an entire like airstrike.
Yeah.
Of F-bombs.
He brings an entire football stadium of F-bombs. Yeah. But yeah, for me it's got to be Bladewolf. All right. On to question 2. Your favorite song from the soundtrack.
Oh, that's so difficult.
If you can even pick one.
Yeah, honestly, there's a lot of good ones. I mentioned it earlier, but Stranger I Remain, because you started going into that, and I was like,
I started talking about all the stuff about it, and you're like, I'm gonna do this. Hang on.
I was like, I was gonna do this, but like, legitimately, I really like that song. It's so different. The pianos are like so good because like I had to sit there and listen for them because they're buried under like layers of synth and rock, but like they're there and it sets the whole song apart. Not to mention how much of like an insight it gives into Mistral's character.
Yeah.
Which is super cool. The other one, and I think it goes without saying, is It Has to Be This Way.
Yeah.
Just that triumphant orchestral rock, like that song gets you so hyped for that absolutely insane fight. Which, like, I think that also, that might have been my favorite level. Was that boss fight?
The
Armstrong final
fight?
the final fight with Armstrong.
Yeah, it's definitely a good one for sure. That's one I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the ones it has to be this way was almost my favorite track.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that I was like, I figured also if I said some like these two, I was like, you'd say different ones.
But I mean, legitimately, like the main thing about it has to be this way is like it's just an awesome freaking song. I sincerely believe it's on par with like Live and Learn in terms of like how hype it is.
Yup. Fully agree.
And works just as well as Live and Learn as a final boss theme. And it's only like amplified to the nines when you actually fight the boss while listening to it. So that one almost wins it out for me. Another one that almost wins that I kind of want to make an honorable mention is My Own Master Now, Bladewolf's theme. And a lot of I only recently started coming to appreciate that one because, you know, I only recently started realizing how much I like Bladewolf as a character. And it's the fact that his theme, weirdly enough, gets a ton of like reprises in cutscenes and like different versions. And so there's like the acoustic version for the first cutscene when you see him that like leads into his theme. There's like the final boss cutscene before you fight Armstrong, like the orchestral one.
Oh, it's so good.
And then there's like the DLC one where you get your escape. And it's like kind of like a toned down, like not quite there yet version to show that it's like building up to that. All those are super
growing
cool.
as a character.
I really do like that one. But I really, if I have to pick just one favorite, it's gotta be The Only Thing I Know for Real, which is the Jetstream Sam fight.
That one's on a whole nother level. And that's the thing. Those are two songs that were also like, I was debating them and I was like, I almost guarantee that Joseph's going to pick those. So I'm going to pick these two.
I'm going to pick one or the other. So yeah, between those three, it really came close. But the main thing about The Only Thing I Know for Real, it's the fact that like with all the great metal, the really awesome, catchy vocals, it's got that flute that accompanies it and gives it this real like mystical, magical, like samurai showdown feel that like really just gets me. So even though like Bladewolf is my favorite character, like that fight song is so good. And there's video essays galore on the topic of like the meaning of like the lyrics and stuff, but really like the lyrics do so much storytelling about Sam, how like on the outside he shows this like cocky, like battle loving exterior who's like confident in every situation and ready to rush into a fight. And then the lyrics are about somebody whose life is basically in shambles and like their ideals are hanging by threads and like they just don't have anything together and they're just kind of hopelessly rushing into battle. And it's so like you see none of this on the outside of Sam, but once you realize that that's his character, like so much of like his actions are so interesting. And it really is just, I don't know. Above all, the thing that just always gets me with this song is like after the guitar solo, where it kind of gets into like the big crescendo at the end. And it's specifically the part where they sing like, looking downward from this deadly height and never realizing why I fight. It's just so like, like, oh, it gets me every time. That's one that like usually if I'm like looking for a good music playlist to start my day or whatever, like that song is a go-to for me.
Yep.
It gets me pumped. Okay. So the last question that I have for you, whether it is from specifically our playthrough or just like from the game, what is your favorite moment from Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance?
I can give two separate answers to that,
and that's fair too.
From the game, I think it was the Senator Armstrong fight.
It's so good.
I like it was hilarious. There's that epic scene with Bladewolf holding the like Sam's sword and doing the playback, like that whole moment was such a wild ride, and I had so much fun with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Favorite moment from our playthrough specifically, though, has to be Sam's DLC, and
I would say the same thing. If we're talking specifically our playthrough, I agree completely.
Like the hilarity that I experienced at that point was so much. I wish I could remember it more in detail, but I was so tired. There was no way I was gonna remember.
Yeah.
But like just that moment of us laughing and just like constantly trying to make the other person laugh by saying something stupid, like. Oh, that was so like that is why I love playing games with you. Is just for moments like that where we're just having like pure unfiltered fun.
Yeah, that was definitely like the most fun that I had with the entire playthrough for sure. In terms of just moments from the game, there's one for me that I'm thinking about. It's the post Jetstream Sam fight scene. Like after you beat him. I don't know, it's just stick with this podcast. You're gonna hear me go on about samurai stuff all the time. Samurais, ninjas, Japan culture. Like I just a
You're
sucker.
the weeb guard.
The weeb. Well, okay, and it's not just like Japan stuff. It's like legitimately like rival showdowns.
Yeah, no,
Are from any culture, rival showdowns are the biggest thing that like always grip me every time. And like this scene, where after they beat Sam, like Raiden like stabs him one last time, and as he's dying, he gives like his last wink to Bladewolf because he has this pre-recorded message that we don't know about yet. And then like he's there on the ground. Bladewolf starts like talking about his sword and everything. He mentions how it was a gift from Sam's father, which just adds that extra emotional gut punch to it.
Yeah, you're just like, oh, and I just killed him.
Yep. And then it's the whole thing, like, first Raiden sassing, he's like, what, are you gonna bury the sword? and then Bladewolf's just like, I will keep it in memory of Sam. And so then Raiden, like, you know, getting a bit more respectful, like, he takes the sword and he does, like, he like, does the thing where he, like, swings it to flick the blood off the blade, and does that samurai style, like, sheathing the sword to your forehead, which is, like, sort of, like, a samurai symbol of, like, respect for a defeated opponent. And it's, like, the music during that scene is extremely beautiful. The way, like, the light from the sunset hits Raiden as he's doing it. It's just beautiful, man. Like,
it's a legit good scene.
It is amazing how under any circumstances I can just turn on that scene and start watching, and if I watch it from like start to finish, like I will have chills by the end of it. It just always happens. And I'm like, to go more into this like samurai crap with me, like Ghost of Tsushima. Everyone knows now that it's like this big, successful, amazing open world game or whatever. But when it was very first announced at E3 and nobody had any clue what it was, like I watched this and I was like, what the heck is this? This looks like a Breath of the Wild ripoff or something stupid like that. And I was just watching, they were doing all the samurai stuff, and it ends with like an epic showdown with like the leaves from like the sakura tree blowing in the wind or whatever, the cherry blossoms and all that. And I almost cried watching that trailer for a game I knew nothing about. Because samurai stuff just gets me.
It's cool.
And so the fact that they have a scene like that is just so beautifully shot, and so like, for as hammy as the rest of the game is, this one moment, like, it takes itself very seriously and does everything just perfectly. It just always gets me. Oh, man. Okay. So we have a unique segment here on Tradin Faves that has never happened before because we've never had enough bad things to say about the game. What was your least favorite moment from the game?
I think I've talked enough at length.
Yeah, I know. I'm joking.
This. Okay,
but,
cool.
yeah,
there's a part of me that thought that you were serious about it, but yeah.
I'm just saying, it's interesting that this is the first time that we're not just 100% on board with a game, because I'm not either.
Yeah,
but
I think we're both in agreement though about that
like it could have been a better game, but at least it's got some great stuff in it. I don't know if I would have liked this game if I paid $40 for it.
Yeah.
But as an $8 game, this rocks. But
I can agree.
So if we want to go into final thoughts here.
Yeah, final thoughts.
Would you like to start or me?
Sure. Because for me, it is what I said like when we started, that like I think that objectively this is a good game. That like, you know, mechanics wise and even like story and character and all that, like it is a good game that like people will like, and I think they should like it. But for me personally, because it hits on those like very uncomfortable themes for me, it's not for me. But I'm still glad that I experienced it, if for no other reason than like, you know, I have the memories of it now.
Yeah.
I have like, you know, I took something away from it, and that's always every game or story I go into is I want to be able to take something away from it.
Yeah.
You know, be it good or bad, something I agreed with or disagreed with. You know, if I can take something away from it, then I'd say that game was a success. And I would say that this game was a success. That it definitely, I experienced some things. They weren't all pleasant things. And then just that ending. My goodness, that ending was bananas.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's kind of where I stand with the game.
Yeah. With that, I gotta say it was kind of sobering. Having the experience of having played so much of this game and gotten used to it, like having seen playthroughs, had my own playthrough, my own experience, and just being used to a lot of the morbid stuff in the game, and then seeing you have a very understandably human reaction to a lot of the more disturbing elements kind of made me realize that like there sort of is something to the fact that like it's very easy to get desensitized to violence. Because that's the thing. We all know that like killing is wrong. Like nobody's gonna walk past that. Like you don't murder. That's just one of the rules of life, and you're not okay if you think that murder is okay. But in terms of a video
Sundowner.
game, sundowner. Yeah, you're a sundowner. Don't be a sundowner. Be a sunny. Anyway.
Yeah.
Or be a weeb who eats pizza and looks at anime girls. I'm so sorry. This moral is going everywhere.
Yeah, that's good.
But yeah, like I'd interacted with a few people regarding this game, like talking about it, and most people were just kind of in it for the hype and the excitement, and so I got really caught up in a lot of that. None of the people that I'd ever talked to about this game were parents before you. So, like, I realized that as we were playing and you were having this kind of serious reaction to this, I was like, yeah, you're a dad. Like, all this stuff about kidnapped kids and stuff, like, oh my gosh, what am I doing to you? It was pretty sobering in that sense. I think at the very least you helped me kind of get over a hyperfixation on this game that I might have had. But at the end of the day, like, there's a lot of stuff that I don't like about this game, and there are some like serious missteps that like keep this game from me just thinking like, oh, this is one of the best games of all time. Like some of those sour points like really soured a bit of the game for me. And I'd kind of forgotten about them until we did this playthrough, and your reaction to the game kind of reminded me of that. But at the very least, what this game does well, it does extremely well.
Agreed.
The humor, the action, the intensity, the gameplay is like... I admit it's kind of like when you play the game like all the way through, especially if you only do it in one sitting, it does kind of get tiring towards the end. Like maybe just a bit too repetitive, like some more enemy variety might have been nice. But like in terms of just like pure controls and, you know, the sensory experience as you play the game, it's amazing what they were able to accomplish. Platinum Games really just has that knack for how to make awesome, stylish games. I guess, you know, the one I didn't realize, Platinum made Star Fox Zero, which is an interesting topic of conversation. Maybe we'll talk about it on the podcast, who knows. But most people did not like Star Fox Zero. I actually did. I'm kind of in the minority on that. But, like, every time I see something with Platinum, even if I don't even like the game, I can't help but appreciate the sense of style that they have. And with Metal Gear Rising specifically, the attention to detail on the sound mixing is really just breathtaking, all the stuff they accomplish with it. I'm like, this game really woke the 15-year-old out of me and reminded me of how much I loved, like, wailing guitars and screaming vocals and edgy, like, sword fights. And so with that, like, the main thing about Metal Gear Rising that it does better than any other video game that I've ever seen is its sound mixing. And it's almost kind of an underrated aspect of the game, because people only think about the edginess of the music or whatever. They don't realize how much effort went into making this game sound good. And I guess the main final takeaway for me about this game is just that it didn't get everything quite right, but my biggest hope is that people, like developers, will look at this game and take the positives from it and do their best to craft better gaming experiences because of the things they learned from this game.
What you're saying is you want the memes to pass on?
Yes, I want them to pass on the good memes. That dank kush, smoke weed every day. No. Not that meme. Yeah, and that's the thing. It already has happened somewhat. Because a game that was heavily inspired by this was one of legitimately my favorite games of all time, Fury. And for those that saw, I already did a Let's Play of that on my channel before we started the podcast. That was how I started this year, was that Let's Play of Fury, and now we're like at the end of it. But like Fury is one that took a lot of the concepts of the game, made them a bit more unique, gave them its own style, and accomplished a lot of the things that Metal Gear Rising was trying to accomplish with fewer drawbacks and fewer F-bombs. So, like, so that is a case of, I hate to continue this line of conversation, but that is a meme that got passed on. And for that, like, I really do respect Metal Gear Rising. And I hope more developers learn from it. Because at the very, very least, if I can't have my dream game of Platinum making a Sonic game, I at least hope that devs of Sonic games would look at this and take something from it.
Yeah.
So that's what I have to say.
That was good.
Oh, man.
Bringing it back.
I'm amazed we got this much discussion out of this game, but
I
like,
know.
that's what we do, man. Like, we're so good at this.
We find like aspects to talk about, and we just keep going.
All right. So, in wrapping up, shall I give us the teaser for next
Yes.
time?
Let's do it.
Man, I am so excited for what we have next. Let's get a bit more formal, shall we?
Yes.
Next time on Tradin Faves, a sequel 15 years in the making, surprising fans everywhere that it managed to climb out of development hell and back into the public eye. It showed up swiftly, unexpectedly, and made such a splash that it was nominated for Game of the Year. So next time, join us for the 5th installment to the beloved Nintendo IP, Metroid Dread.
Woo! I'm excited to talk about this game.
Oh, I am so excited for this, not only because it's like Metroid Dread and it's just as fantastic of a game as it is, but like, we started this podcast to talk about Metroid games.
We did, and I'm so excited to finally like this will be a good one.
Yeah. This one's really just gonna sweeten the deal. So thanks for watching, guys, and remember to tune in next time because there will be Metroid Dread. Samus in the mirror nods her head. I didn't think of that part.
My goodness, so good.
Clearing my throat. You burping.
Nah, I do. Where are we burping, boys?
That's going in.
No.
I'm just kidding. That one won't go in.
I mean, yes, but no.
I mean, okay, maybe in like the conversation afterwards, but not the burp itself.
Yeah.
I did that wrong. We're gonna cut that. But if we finish this game, shut up.
Okay, I will.
Wait, I can just cut this out and it'll sound like a clean take because I'm a master of editing. But if we
Timing.
shut up,
I'm so sorry.
this will go in the bloopers. All right, I'll tell you to shut up first before I say the line.
Do it. Hey, welcome back. I'm being handed a baby.
Are you serious? We specifically.
I know. We're gonna have to do it a third time.
No, we're not. This is funny. So we have to have the baby present while we record. That's just the moral that I'm taking away from this.
Constant. No, it's because my wife is taking him, but she's like, I gotta go make him a bottle. Can you just hold him for a minute? And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, we'll just jump cut to when there's not a baby.
Oh my goodness. Dude, how is this episode such a disaster?
Because Metal Gear Rising is a disaster.
It's a beautiful disaster. Oh my goodness.
It's a disaster piece. It's literally like nothing's happening for 4 hours. Not doing anything. We're just sending memes, horsing around, and then we're like, all right, fine, I guess we'll start recording. Baby.